So like, I guess you could say like, does the speed go quicker than other backs, like in 2-3 years down the line or something? Cause he's not as tall. He's a little more, but like, I don't know. And also who cares?
Who cares?
Like, who cares? Like, deal with that in 3 years, man. I don't know. Like, and also like, it just seems like we're way overthinking. Like, I'm already way overthinking this. He's fast now. And he's going to be fast next, he's going to be fast in the 2025 season. So I just don't really think there is. I mean, he's big enough. He's versatile. He breaks tackles and adds after breaking tackles, and he's going to get drafted very highly, potentially in the top 10. I mean, I think that's in play. And he's a lock to be a first round pick.
All right, Pat, we're back after our marathon wide receiver and quarterback preview pod of the 2025 rookie class for fantasy football and specifically for best ball. The big board drafters is out now. There's lots of best ball tournaments out there for us to dabble in. We had to turn this into 2 parts because, as one might expect, you and I can get long, but particularly on wide receivers.
Is a little bit of a weak word there. I don't know that we have to go short once to use can.
Yeah, that's true. Literally always go extremely long. Yes. But I will say in particular, like rookie wide receivers is just like, I enjoy talking about them a lot. I think you do too. And so you combine the lack of brevity with a weird rookie wide receiver class, and you're going to get a 3.5-hour podcast. Go check that one out. It is on both Pat and the Spike Week YouTube and podcast feeds. But today we're going to continue our 0 running back path through the rookie class here. Today we're going to hit the tight ends and we're going to hit the running backs. And funny enough, this running back class is probably the best part of the whole rookie class for 2025. So we'll hit on a lot of fun running backs. But we want to do tight ends first. Also, just super quickly, want to hit the fact that I know it's big board season. Some people are taking breaks from best ball, whatever. If you are going to draft some of these, like I said, big board, little board, drafters, what have you, you can get 40% off of your Spike Week subscription with promo code LEGUP. You can use the Sidekick and the Draft Hacker and Draft IQ and put it all together. And I actually feel like in the big board, it's really, really advantageous. Pop whichever rankings you want in there. You can get right with both of those, with your Legendary Upside subscription and your Spike Week subscription. You can kind of really be supercharged with everything we're talking about here, but with the tools and the rankings and the data and everything to like guide you while you're drafting too, between the Sidekick and the Draft Hacker. And like I said, you can get 40% off of that. Also, check out last week. We brought back Best Ball Bros here on Spike Week, which is a little more casual, fun interview style podcast. Pat was the first guest. We got into his death row last meal, his favorite movies. His death row last meal is borderline psychotic. So make sure you go and check that out.
I was hoping you would say genius, but psychotic I'll take. Yeah.
It was.
I mean,
genius,
I'm on death row,
I'm worried that you're like on the trajectory to reach death row. The fact that this was so well thought out. It was a little scary, but go check that out as well. And let's get into some of these rookies. Pat, I like this tight end class. I'm there's not necessarily I almost said Kyle Pitts. There might be.
Well, there isn't. I mean, in fairness to Pitts, he was an amazing prospect. I think Bowers was probably slightly better, but he was an incredible prospect. We can never take that away. And he had 1,000 yards as a rookie, Erik. Let's not talk about what's happened after that.
It has been all downhill from there. Hopefully, we get a little bit more out of this class. But I'm curious your take on this. For me, there are some intriguing other prospects, certainly, but there's kind of a top 3.
I think it's top 2.
So I include Harold Fannin in my top 3, specifically because for fantasy football purposes, because he is what's a different word than generational? We need a different word than generational because he's not generational. But he had a generational tight end season this past year, and I think he is like a pretty generational tight end pass catcher. He has some weird quirks. We don't know about the draft capital or whatever, but I think he's a very unique talent at the tight end position when it comes to catching passes. So I kind of put him in there from a fantasy perspective. I would not put him in there from like a draft capital, or like if I'm building an NFL team, I'm not sure he fits in that conversation with Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. But I wanted to toss that in first to kind of like think about the class as a whole.
Yeah, we definitely should dive in on Fannin. But I would personally say that I think this is a class with a top tier of 2 tight ends that is Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. And the reason I would put them in their own tier that doesn't include Fannin is because of draft capital. And you look at Warren is going to be probably, a top 15 pick. He's mocked to the Colts relentlessly. Every single mock draft has him 14 to the Colts. If he doesn't go to the Colts, he's likely to go, maybe to the Broncos at 20. That's where Loveland always gets mocked, but most people prefer. I have seen a little bit of like there's a chance that Loveland goes ahead of Warren, but I haven't seen any mocks where it actually happens. The big consensus is Warren 1, Loveland 2, but not really like with much of a gap. So you'll typically see like Tyler Warren goes 14 to the Colts, and then Loveland goes 20 to the Broncos or 22nd to the Chargers. But the nice thing for Warren is that if he does fall like a little bit, you do those, the Broncos and Chargers are kind of like the landing spots, and maybe he gets one of those. But it's unlikely that either guy falls outside the first round. Warren is an excellent blocker, traditional tight end, much more in the mold of like a TJ Hawkinson as opposed to, like a pass catcher. He's like a guy who plays tight end and will hit the ground running, I think, in that role. And that's nice. Like that gives you safety of there's no coach needs to like figure out the right way to use Tyler Warren, right? It's
just use him.
You just use him. You just put him in. He does all the tight end stuff. So if you've got tight end plays in your playbook, then Warren just goes there. Loveland is a little bit more where you'd worry. Like I actually think that the Chargers would be like a little bit less fun. Not that I wouldn't get excited about it, but Disley would play plenty because Loveland is more of a pass catcher. Now they have such a pass catching need. You're talking about Loveland with maybe 65% route participation still being absolutely awesome on the Chargers, but he's a little bit more of, you don't trust him quite as much in run blocking situations, but he is ultimately, I think, like a traditional tight end, but more in the Dalton Kincaid mold. More kind of the Noah Fant mold of like
he's somewhere between, right? He's somewhere between Warren and Kincaid, closer to Kincaid than to Warren.
Closer to Kincaid,
right? But I trust in. Do you think this is flawed? I still trust in like the fact that he's from Michigan, right? It's kind of like an Iowa tight end. Frankly, it's these Big Ten tight ends. Like he hasn't proven to be like an awesome blocker, but Michigan didn't throw. Like all they want to do is run, and he is a tight end from Michigan. I know he's not George Kittle, he's not Tyler Warren as a blocker, he's not that, but I still have a little bit of faith that like there's something there. Like he's not going to get dusted off, and you're like, oh my gosh, he's Mike Gesicki, right? Who's a glorified wide receiver.
Yeah, it's. But I'm talking when I say blocking, I'm talking about run blocking because
right.
I really care about run blocking for tight ends because when you can run block, then you are on plays where they're pretending to run, and play action is a big, and audibles for sure. But play action around the goal line is big for tight ends. You get a lot of like tight end touchdowns. You want to be on the field for play action, right? I mean, just from like watching it. I wrote an article a couple of years ago. This is backed up by stats, but I mean, even if we just watch football and you go, oh yeah, it's nice when the tight end's wide open off of play action play from like the 4 or whatever, So he's not a very good run blocker, and I do think that's a bit of a concern. He's more like I just sorted by career run blocking grade. He's a little bit below Eric Ebron. He's below Austin Seferian Jenkins, Aaron Hernandez, Brevin Jordan, which is a weaker one, but let's see. Yeah, I mean, it's like Luke Musgrave. He's below him. He's below Greg Dulcich. So he is that he's above Kyle Pitts. You got to give him that. But he's more in the Pitts mold of like, he's an exciting pass catcher. You probably, where he could end up failing is like he never fully develops into a guy that they trust in running situations. But again, like Pitts did have 1,000 yards as a rookie, and he's a better run blocker than Pitts, and he's going to have first-round draft capital. I think he'll get his chances, especially down the stretch in his rookie year. I'm not really concerned about a floor of playing time. I think if you look like 2-3 years out, he's just not as safe as Warren is, because Warren's like, he's gonna be a starting tight end. He's gonna be pretty good.
My concern for Loveland is the Dalton Kincaid run out that we've gotten when you come in as a. That's why I brought up like the Michigan thing. I was just like, I know he wasn't awesome, but like he certainly has practiced run blocking and comes from a place that like you have to run block as a tight end because they only throw it about 12 times a game, but when they do, they threw it to him. He moves around the formation. He lines up out wide in the slot, all that kind of stuff. But
he's slightly better than Mike Gesicki and Tyler Eifert as well, which are just two more names to kind of throw out in that mold.
Yeah,
he's in the Eifert mold.
Eifert, I like the Eifert shout. I think because he was never a particularly great blocker, but he was good enough that they would keep him on the field. Which then, like, he wasn't as good. I mean, I don't want to get into Tyler Eifert prospect type stuff, but like Eifert never turned into like a special pass catcher. If Loveland can be a really good pass catcher and just be Tyler Eifert as a run blocker, he's a smash. Like he's a big time smash. The concern is the Kincaid run out, right? Obviously, let's set aside Pitts because they're very different. But the Kincaid run out is we need you to play tight end, but you physically cannot do the run blocking portion of playing tight end. So what happens? You lose the routes, you lose those valuable routes and snaps like you're talking about, and then they re-sign Dawson Knox because they're like, we can't run this forward with you as the guy we trust, Dawson Knox, right? And that's Will Dissly or whoever, right? That's the Foster Moreau. Why is Foster Moreau still running 40% of the routes? Because Loveland can't block and they don't trust him to block. And so that's the big thing. We'll talk about Fannin with that as well. But that's the big thing with these tight ends. It's like pass blocking for running backs, right? It's like it doesn't show up in the fantasy stats directly, but indirectly, it's so huge for you being on the field and then being able to score fantasy points.
Yeah. And Eifert is actually Loveland's closest comp in my stuff. So he fits that mold for sure. The other guy I would mention is Sam Laporta was not a good run blocker. A bit better than Loveland coming out. Mm-hmm. But, that's a team that runs a lot of play action, and they've just been creative in their deployment of Laporta. Like he does not required to, be like an amazing run blocker at the pro level. And he's been really, really strong. It wasn't quite as good as we were hoping this year, but you look at the first 2 years he's had, it's been pretty amazing. So it's not like a huge red flag, but it is the way you could see him disappointing, I think. It's like one of those things. He's either going to be good enough and get out there. Like, we don't need him to be like a sick run blocker. I would prefer that because it's like that adds safety. This is, by the way, one of the reasons I think Bowers was such an amazing prospect because he's actually a really good run blocker, even though he's undersized. But that's like the minor red flag on Loveland. But, when you look at the best ball prices, Loveland, I think, is a bigger target than Warren because you're getting a big discount.
Yep.
And they're both, like, you think about the ceiling, they both have very high ceilings. They're both pretty strong rookie tight end prospects who are going to be first-round picks. They're both going to be first-round picks. And Loveland has the better landing spots, I think. Like, while I think that Will Dissly would play plenty if he goes to the Chargers, like I said, it's still an amazing landing spot. I do not want to see either of these guys on the Colts. Like, that sucks, And so you could end up in a situation where it's like Tyler Warren's the better player, but he's on the Colts, and Loveland's got a few more holes in his game, but he's like, by the end of the year, the number one target on the Broncos. Give me that guy.
Is Warren? Let's just say for fun sake of discussion, Warren ends up on the Colts. Is Warren one of those that you still really want to buy in Dynasty? Because, I mean, they just benched Anthony Richardson. There's no reason that Anthony Richardson is long-term the Colts, in 2 years. Who says Anthony Richardson is the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts? So in Dynasty, you're like, okay, this stinks because maybe this year he's not awesome for fantasy. Although I would contend if he can consolidate, right? They were running 3 and 4 man committees at tight end for the last 2 years in Indianapolis. That if he could consolidate it, it's still not ideal. But like maybe we just stop throwing all those passes to Michael Pittman. Maybe he's good enough to do that. I'm just spitballing. But in Dynasty, it would be like, I'm a little less concerned because he's a top 15 pick. He's a really good prospect. And I'll deal with the quarterback thing because I don't have to, right? Like, I don't need to win all the money right now with him in Dynasty. But in Best Ball, it's like, what can we really win with Tyler Warren if Anthony Richardson is his quarterback, right? Like, as a rookie, you mentioned Loveland with the Dissly thing. Is like, it's also not a guarantee that Dissly takes a bunch of the routes away from him. If Loveland shows enough, he could, especially as the season goes on, get that. And the same thing on the negative side could happen for Warren. We just assume, right, plug and play, just play all the snaps because he can do all this. It's like there is no thing that's a 100% certainty in any of this. He could show up and get 60%. What if they just like playing Mo Alley-Cox? I don't remember if Mo Alley-Cox is a free agent, right? They just like playing Kylan Granson. They bring one of those guys back. Jelani Woods comes in and they're like, we don't want to totally give up on Jelani Woods, and it's like Tyler Warren's running 65% of the routes with freaking Anthony Richardson. Like, that is a catastrophe. Like, that is a total disaster. So I just have the price on Warren, I think, is ultimately what I'm getting to. That there's not risk in what I believe in him as a player, but there's risk in the outcome given the price on what we have to pay for him right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think Warren is nearly as good of a prospect as Bowers. Like, I don't think it's even close.
No.
I don't think, I think he's a worse prospect than guys like David Njoku, than Hawkinson. He's a good tight end prospect, but it doesn't pop to me like, oh my God, and it's because I'm looking at him as a pass catcher, and he didn't really do a ton before this year. He had 422 yards in 2023, which was good for 15% of Penn State's yards.
Behind Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson, God. Yeah, that's not great.
Does that mean Theo's really good, or does that mean Warren's just not as good? I don't know.
I mean, it's not ideal. But then this year was awesome. 30% dominate rating as a tight end. So that's really, really great. But he was a 4th-year player. I might have been. Is he a 4th or 5th?
5th, I believe, right?
I think 5th. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure 5th.
Check. Yes, he's a 5th-year player. So redshirt senior goes off. Redshirt junior can't pass Theo Johnson. Redshirt senior goes off. Look, I mean, it's an awesome year. He's going to be a first-round guy. Film evaluations are awesome. So I'm not like saying Tyler Warren's a bad prospect. He's not. He's a really good prospect. But I don't think he's just this like bulletproof prospect that he's getting held up as. And I've honestly rolled my eyes at kind of any comparisons to Bowers. Like, it's just not even close. When you look at like predictive stuff of like, this, like a guy in his 3rd year from high school leads the SEC in YAC for the 3rd year in a row versus a dude who doesn't pass Theo Johnson, then goes nuts as a 5th-year senior. Like, those aren't comparable prospects, even if both go first round. So, especially when you think about specifically, I want this guy to produce yards as a pass catcher. It's like, Warren might end up being better as a blocker or, certain schemed up, real football ways. But who's catching more yards? Who's scoring more touchdowns? It's just, So from that perspective, I do think Warren is overpriced a little bit, at least. Not like, oh my God, how could you take him? But I just have not really found him to be super appealing at where he goes because there's some downside risk. I also would be curious to see what he runs at the combine. I mean, I think there's some assessments I've seen expect him to be like really athletic. But I don't know if he's that's like at least a potential downside, and for Loveland as well, because our expectations of tight ends are really high for athleticism. We want athleticism, like we want elite athleticism at the tight end position. So if he just shows up and is like a good but not elite athlete, that's going to have people a little bit nervous, I think. Anytime you need a guy to test like an elite athlete at the combine, that's not so great, right? If his price is going to fall if he doesn't. So both, that would be like, I guess, a minor red flag for Loveland and for Warren, is that they both need to turn in really strong combines to kind of keep up the current level of enthusiasm.
Yeah, because it's at the NFL level, playing tight end now. You're went as a pass catcher. Again, why the things you outlined are so important, being in on rundowns to get the layups. We want the layups, right? Because the layups don't require being an elite athlete. The layups don't require, you're just open by scheme, by whatever. You're a wide receiver, right? We just watched essentially the demise of Travis Kelce this season. It's not that he was bad, but we watched when athleticism goes.
Yeah.
And you are no longer out athleting, like the days of like being able to play tight end and you're matched up against a 265-pound inside linebacker in pass coverage. Like, it's long gone, dude. These linebackers are 225 pounds. Like I'm exaggerating, but these linebackers are safeties of the days past. And look at what the Eagles just did in the Super Bowl. They just played straight nickel all game. And so you're going against coverage DBs. Right. So you have to be not necessarily a special athlete. You don't have to run a 4.4, whatever, but like you need to be some level of athlete to get open consistently at the NFL level. There's nuance to that, right? If you're just really smart, blah, blah. That's part of Kelce, is he was a great athlete and he just, backyard football genius, right? Can go out and just find the gaps in coverage and stuff. But like as a rookie, are you going to be like, I don't think that you have to have some form of athleticism.
But I actually think that the athleticism thing, it's like what is priced in and what isn't. And people have gone too far with the tight end athleticism, in my opinion, they're basically like, unless a guy has like a 9.9 RAS, I'm not really that interested. And if he has a 9.9 RAS, I don't care about anything else. That dude's going to smash.
Speaking of the Colts, that's Jelani Woods.
That's Jelani Woods. Yeah. I mean, who was the dude on the Jets have drafted a couple of these guys. That just do nothing. They just do absolutely, because they didn't do anything in college. So, look at that. They don't do anything in the pros either. It's going to bug me that I can't remember this guy's name. But I think with like, you have like Mark Andrews didn't like crush in RAS. Like there's, right. It's not like the end of the world.
There's just
Hunter
a bar
Henry didn't.
Clear, right. There's just a certain bar you have to clear.
Yeah. Bowers didn't work out. And so people were pretty worried about that. But
spoiler, he's fine. He dominated.
He's fine.
He dominated the SEC for 3 years.
Zach Kuntz, by the way, is the guy I was
Zach Kuntz. Oh my gosh.
Kuntz,
yeah. That's why Luke Musgrave went ahead of Tucker Kraft, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember. And Tucker Kraft significantly
9.94 for Musgrave
so far in the NFL. Tucker Kraft just good at the game, right? And Luke Musgrave didn't do shit at Oregon State, and we made every excuse because he went in the second round and his RAS was awesome, and we are like, well, that's fine, right? We got the draft capital, we got the athlete. Who cares? Oregon State, they stink, right? It's like you still have to do something. Like you have to do something at all at the college level, especially at tight end.
Theo Johnson, by the way, he had a 9.99. So, dude, he was athletic.
Get ready to learn Jameis to Theo Johnson this year or something. I just want to hit Tyler Warren. One thing I really, really like about Tyler Warren, since we're being a little bit negative, and neither of us are intending to be necessarily about him, just calling out relevant factors about him, is like you mentioned, like the general dominator rating. One thing I also like, I'm not saying this is like foolproof, but when you can just like flat out nuke a game, and like you are the abs, like honestly, like Kyle Pitts was just awesome at Florida consistently, but like the superstars can have these games. Fannin did this a lot, but at a low level. When you can do it in the Big Ten and you can do it in the SEC, right? Why do I like Trey Harris and all that kind of stuff? Like the guy who shows up and goes like 17 for 250 and 3 or whatever, like in a huge Big Ten game, like it's not everything, but it's like that is a different level of dominating a football game that like always sticks in my brain. And then when you add, it's funny that the Broncos need a tight end. When you add, like, they're using Tyler Warren as a wildcat quarterback. He's their goal line rusher. They have 2 NFL running backs in the backfield, and they're giving the ball to Tyler Warren at the goal line as a wildcat ball carrier, right? Like, they'll throw passes with them. It's like those
guys had to go back to school, you know?
Warren they were like, Warren took so many touchdowns, we're going to go in like the 3rd round, you know? But like when a team builds the plane out of that dude, I take note of that. You know,
and if Warren was going 20 picks later, I'd be screaming about what a bargain he is. So I don't want to be overly negative about Warren. It's just that Warren is really, really well liked by just kind of the general dynasty scouting community, I think. And I
just watch him.
So it kind of has me.
He fits the peak scout bro mold because he does
peak scout bro for sure. I mean, he's a great football player. It just has me kind of a little bit like, I don't know that he's the best fantasy prospect I've ever seen. Yeah. And do we have to pay a tax for being a great football player? I don't want to have to pay a tax for that. So keep an eye on it. I mean, I think he's like fine. I think it's like a neutral where he's going. I don't think he's like a fade, but he's just neutral. And Loveland, I think, is a target. Like, you're getting Loveland at a discount to where he should go. So
I think Loveland has almost the same upside. But the price is not almost the same. It's quite different.
Almost the same upside, lower floor, but a big discount to take on that lower floor, which I'm into.
The next, we got to talk about Fannin because that's as anyone would probably expect. Just quickly on this tight end class. So on Warren, everybody knows I'm a big, very basic. Let's keep it simple. Yards per route run, targets per route run, all that kind of stuff. In the country, wide receivers and tight ends all lumped together, Tyler Warren's 15th in the country in yards per route run. I think I have it at 100 routes or something like that. I forget what my routes filter is, but 15th at 3.07. That is incredible.
That's awesome.
for a tight end. However, would you like to know who is 4th? Harold Fannin Jr.
Yeah.
At oh my God, this just went dark on me. 3.65. So yes, he went to a small school. Yes, he's a little bit smaller, 230 pounds. You know who else is 230 pounds? Brock Bowers. Yes, I have concerns about. I have all the same concerns that everybody else has. Right? How are they going to use him? Is he going to be part-time? Can he block well enough, etc.? One thing, he blocked his ass off this year.
He's a good blocker. He
blocked his ass off this year. I'm certain that he knew he would have to like really block, and the team probably knew that they needed to show that he could block for him to get real draft capital. But speaking of building the plane out of somebody, Bowling Green built the plane out of a tight end, and he had arguably the most efficient tight end season ever when he was the only good player on his team. He cooked Penn State. He cooked real big power conference teams, cooked them. So like you can say, oh, look, it was just at Bowling Green. When he played up in competition, he was just as good. A&M, I think they played A&M and Penn State, and he was awesome. And it's the small school and the size thing that is keeping people out of it. And I agree with you, the draft capital from our perspective. But he's as simple as me for me as like, you just don't do that without being good at football. And I just want good football players, especially at cheap prices. And so I love to go to the Island of Misfit Toys when I know that toy is going to be fun as shit to play with, but other people don't like it. And that's Harold Fannin to me.
Yeah, so a little bit worse of a blocker in PFF block grade than TJ Hawkinson. Better than Trey McBride. Better than Pat Fryermuth. Better than Durham Smythe, who's basically like a professional blocker. Better than Jake Ferguson. Better than Dawson Knox has become a professional blocker. So he was a legit good run blocker. Now it's at Bowling Green, and maybe it doesn't translate as much because given that he's really undersized, but not the same. I mean, it would be a real concern if he was undersized and a bad run blocker. Then you're like, this dude just might be buried. Yep. I think for me, Fannin is someone that I was excited to be excited about. and like ready to kind of go to the mat of like, this is like one of my guys this year. He goes to the Senior Bowl, and coming out of the Senior Bowl, it's the excitement around Elijah Arroyo and around a little bit lower key, but Mason Taylor. Those two guys were seen as the big winners out of the Senior Bowl. Listen to Nate Tice and Dane Brugler talking about it, and they were like, yeah, you know, some teams are pretty into Fannin, but like he's seen as maybe kind of an H-back, you know, kind of specialized role, move him around. Maybe he's like a Kyle Juszczyk, you know, that kind of thing. Like coming off the Ben Sinnott year, you know, it is tough when you're like, hey, I'm going to take a guy who might not play the position where he actually gets on the field to catch passes. Like we need them to be wide receivers with tight end eligibility. It's not so great when they're fullbacks with tight end eligibility. And that's the downside with Fannin. And then you look at like potential draft capital. I mean, it would not be shocking if he was the 5th tight end drafted in this class, because the two guys we already talked about, and Arroyo and Mason Taylor. And so now you're talking about maybe him falling to the 3rd round. I honestly don't think it would be completely shocking if like someone else went ahead of him, like a Gunnar Helm or something, and he goes, he goes like 4th round.
NFL's very, very picky about their type. They're still, they're getting better, I think, at some of the other position stuff in terms of, I shouldn't say better. I'm not saying I'm right about Fannin and they're wrong, but they're very stuck in kind of their ways of certain body types and certain archetypes and all that kind of stuff at tight end. So when you are on that island of misfit toys at tight end, especially, you're a faller candidate for sure.
Yeah, and so you're looking at the top 2 guys are looking like locks to go round 1, and then the other guy is maybe not a lock to go day 2. He's at least possible to fall to round to round 4 to day 3. So that has me like a little nervous about him, especially for best ball, where like over the long arc of an NFL career, you know, I can have the fact that Fannin is good will win out, right? It's like Fannin is good. It doesn't matter that he's not really a tight end or that he's smaller than you want to play tight end, but he's going to eventually get an opportunity and you're going to be surprised about how good he is, and he's going to consolidate touches. Well, that might not happen for a while. You know, like Jonnu Smith would be a potential kind of comp for him, another kind of undersized guy, good after the catch. But Jonnu Smith didn't do anything for a while. It took a few years for him to really emerge. And I could see that kind of career arc, like an old school, you know, tight ends don't produce right away kind of issue for him, because he's got to convince a team maybe that he is a tight end. So for best ball, especially, I think there's a clear tier break. For dynasty, I think there is as well, but I'm more willing to be like, whatever, I'll stick him on my bench, and I'm just gonna let him develop, basically. Tight end premium, it's extremely valuable. If he's anything close to what he was in college at the NFL level, then I just hit a huge home run. But we have seen guys that were really cool pass catchers in college, and then they just don't turn into anything in the pros. I mean, like Josh Oliver was like a really fun college pass catcher.
Not to this level.
Not to this level. Although, you know who had a 38% dominator rating and then a 49% dominator rating?
I don't know, but I'm scared.
At 2013 and 2014 at Minnesota? Max Williams.
Oh,
Max
I loved Max Williams too, so this is not a fucking surprise.
So, you know, it's like
pick? Wasn't he a 2nd-round pick?
He was a 2nd-round pick, I think. Yeah, he's kind of like he's always lurking in you know, you look at like the tight ends, it's like, oh.
Max Williams turned into Foster Moreau. Max Williams was started as Harold Fannin and turned into Foster Moreau. Yeah.
So there's just a really low floor with a player like this. The ceiling is really high though. So, I've been taking a little less, because it seems like the floor part of it has not gotten any less scary, and the ceiling, I think the ceiling is a little tied to the ceiling is like tied to him getting installed. Like, you really want to talk about ceiling, he goes 2nd round and someone installs him right away as their starting tight end, he will smash. Like, I'm so excited about it. If an NFL team believes in this guy and is like, he's an important piece of our offense from day one, I'm so fucking in. I'm so in. But I'm trying to gauge how likely that is.
Yep, 100%. There's the conversation around him and a lot of, again, I love that like Island of Misfit Toys guys, because they always get discounted at this time of the year, and sometimes even heading into the season. But that comes with it a very low floor, because sometimes the NFL doesn't like those guys, right?
Right.
And so even if you end up right on them, which can happen, they are good even at the NFL level. Like you said, it can take time. It could take a year. It could take 2 years. It could take 4 years, right? Jonnu Smith, this peaks at age 30, has his breakout season. It just, like, you were a Jonnu Smith bull, you feel vindicated as all hell, right? Like, you feel like, yeah, I told you this dude was awesome, and he was okay, right, for Tennessee and stuff. But like the full blown, my God, Jonnu Smith is amazing, didn't happen for like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, but I would say even with Tennessee, like because with Tennessee, he had he didn't have. I'm looking at FFPC, so he hit 10.7 tight end premium points per game in 2020, which was year 4. Yeah. As a rookie, he had 18 receptions. Sophomore, 20 receptions. Then he jumps to 35 for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he scores 8 touchdowns. 41 receptions, 448 yards, and 8 touchdowns in his 4th season.
Was that the 1 seed?
Then he disappears.
Was that the year they got the 1 seed? Was that the year they got the 1 seed? That they were,
maybe. Yeah, I think it would have been, because I think that is because they beat Lamar in the playoffs the year before, and I think that was.
And they lost to Lamar that year.
Yeah,
in the playoffs.
Yeah,
so they didn't have to get the 1 seed. It was in the wild card, but they lost anyway. I was just trying to put my timelines together on old.
He goes to New England
he's
with
so
Hunter
much
Henry.
Than people think he is.
I know. So he goes to. Remember, they signed Hunter Henry and him. He's backing him up for a couple years, and
Jonnu went ahead of Hunter. I'll never forget this, and I've always liked Jonnu. Jonnu went like 3 rounds ahead of Hunter Henry in best ball drafts, and Hunter Henry was the smash of all smashes that year. Funny. It was awesome.
Yeah. So I actually mean the obviously it took a long time to get to 15.7 tight end premium points per game that we got this past year, but even to get to like sweet, almost 500 yards and 8 touchdowns, that would be great as a rookie, but it came in year 4.
Right.
And he was a smaller school tight end. He went to Florida International, and very productive as a pass catcher. Big RotoViz guy at the time. But yeah, he had a 44% dominator rating as a sophomore there, and then 2 years of 20. Actually, all 4 seasons he was there, he had above 20%. So, a career dominator rating of 27% as a tight end, pretty damn good. But yeah, it just sometimes takes a little bit with like a little, kind of a more undersized, smaller school tight end prospect.
Yep, 100%. I will just, like I said, I'm happy to readjust the larger sample we get, but like production is like elite production, right? Is where where I just like, I'm willing to plant my flag there, and especially in the big board where like it's one thing to worry a ton about like ADP and stuff, in August, in February, like we just know all these prices are wrong. I don't know which ones are wrong,
right?
But they're all wrong. Oh shucks, I paid 2 rounds more for Harold Fannin than I should have paid for him. It's like who cares?
Yeah,
everybody's paying wrong price. Now I don't want to draft a guy who goes in the 3rd round.
It's more about how big of a bag I have.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I think that's ultimate. My personal take is, if you're playing the big board right now and you're full fading Harold Fannin, like there better be a different thing you're doing at tight end that's like just your total flag. You're just drafting Trey McBride in every draft or whatever. And even then, I would say, why don't you just take some Fannin with Trey McBride? I think it's a mistake to full fade. How much do you go in? That's up to each person. But I think he is that level of ceiling that I would not ignore him right now.
Yeah, in the rankings at Legendary Upside, still 5 picks ahead of ADP. I do think he's a target. I just thought for a minute that, we were going to end up being like 80 picks ahead of ADP and then just like let the ADP like kind of settle us in at somewhere reasonable. But that's not how I ultimately landed for now. I could change that. The combine could change that. One thing I would note is there was a little bit of worry about him at the Senior Bowl in terms of like how athletic he was, but his miles per hour, he was the fastest of all the tight ends there. Fastest acceleration, fastest deceleration of all the tight ends this year, and all time, he was 4th fastest. Now, the only issue is he's pretty small, right? So he's undersized. So he's going against in these metrics, like it's him 20 pounds lighter than some of these other guys. So yeah, so he's 4th all time. Luke Musgrave, Stephen Sullivan, Ian Thomas, and then Harold Fannin in all-time
Stephen Sullivan
speed.
was a converted wide receiver, right? I think.
Is that right? I'm not sure. Then last year, Ben Sinnott had the fastest acceleration. Harold Fannin, second fastest ever. Second fastest deceleration behind Stephen Sullivan. And then, he's explosive efforts, which are fast acceleration and deceleration on the same play. 6th highest of those. Cameron Latu, Will Mallory, Ben Sinnott, Jordan Akins, Cole Turner. So I don't know if it means like really that much. Trey McBride was 8th though, so it actually means a lot. No, it doesn't necessarily mean a ton, but like he's gonna test well, I think, based off this, right? He's probably gonna test well at the combine, so that should help.
He's definitely not skipping testing. Let's just say I would not be surprised if Tyler Warren didn't run because he's like, shit, I'm gonna run 4.7. I don't think he's gonna run that, but I'm just saying, like, if Tyler Warren's like, I
Warren doesn't need to test.
I think Warren's going to run. I don't think Warren has to run, and if there's any question, I don't think he should run because I don't think he should put that risk out there. Fannin is going to run, and he is almost assuredly going to run well. So there's like the different kind of levels to it.
Yeah. No, that has me. I would like to hear a drumbeat about like teams are really starting to see this guy as like a real tight end, right? Like, and that could come out of the combine.
When he runs 4.4, I think they will.
Yeah. So I do completely agree that this is not a time to be full fading Fannin. It's just, someone if you had told me a month ago or maybe 6 weeks ago that Fannin was going to be at 185 in the big board, or sorry, 192, 185 is where we have him ranked. But if you told me he was going there, I'd be like, oh, I guess do I have 80% then? And I've played a little more cautiously than I was expecting to play it, and I've been explaining why.
And I'm not as one.
And Merrick's solid. Which honestly, you're making me jealous. I wish I just like ahead. Put on 30. Blinders and was drafting him more aggressively because he's extremely fun. He's extremely fun. And watching him play too, it's like he's fun after the catch.
Go watch,
go watch him.
He's super fun. So like if you want to watch really fun, Tyler Warren is a fun watch. Go watch the Tyler Warren USC game specifically. That's the game I was talking about. That was like 17 catches, 20 targets. Like he made USC his bitch. Tyler Warren did in that game. It was like the USC defense seemingly got a little better coming into the season, and then they ran into Tyler Warren, and you were like, "Oh no, nope, they still stink." But Harold Fannin was doing that. The two most fun watches.
I'm gonna raise him a little bit. He's gonna test well. I'm gonna raise him a little.
You don't gotta come to my crazy level.
I'm not coming to your. Yeah,
like I said, I'm 30 spots ahead. I'm 30 spots ahead. I'm willing to admit I get over my skis on these guys. Okay. But he's super fun. And also I think
he's very right.
Those are the kinds of guys I want to swing on in here. Again, however everybody manages their portfolio, like no offense.
You know what you win, right? What do you win when you win is super evident.
Exactly. The only other thing I'll say, two quick things. Like I said, Brock Bowers is small and was small.
Yeah.
And so like size is a detriment. obviously Harold Fannin went to Bowling Green and Brock Bowers went to Georgia. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying there is.
Right. Tyler Warren's not Brock Bowers, but Harold Fannin is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who wants that Tyler Warren guy? Harold Fannin is just Brock Bowers. Yeah. But even like Trey McBride coming out of school was 240. And so, there is precedent for like if Fannin comes in and weighs in at like 237 or something like that, like, dude, wheels up, man. Like, I think he's kind of strong. If you watch him, like, again, you watch him run block, I think he's a stout.
He was 238 at the Senior Bowl. So, I mean, that's what I didn't even expect him to weigh.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So you get him at 240 pounds, give or take, and he tests well. I think it's, I think it's fine. It's just, is he going to get the shot from the NFL team? I'm not particularly concerned about what the upside case is. And I think, again, we're just like kind of giving our takes on all of these players as prospects and as assets. But these are the kind of guys I want to swing on. And like, if it misses, it's like think about the other like late round tight ends that you can venture into. And I like some of them totally. But like, what do you win when you win? Like, what do you win with Harold Fannin is like a generational tight end prospect, right? Like, that's the absolute mega ceiling. And then there's like look, I have Ben Sinnott in the rankings. Like, please God, Zach Ertz, don't come back. And it's like, what do I really win with this guy who couldn't get on the field over a bunch of dust balls at tight end? It's like, I'm trying to weigh all of that stuff in the big board, as well as like, come on, don't we want to have some fun? Like, this dude is fun. Let's have some fun.
There's two kind of upside cases, and the problem is that both these dudes are much bigger programs. So it's like, but let's dream, okay? Jordan Reed came in at 236, which is actually lighter than Fannin, 238. And then the other guys
had
actually
run blocking concerns. Jordan Reed had run blocking concerns as well.
Although he had a slightly better PFF run blocking grade. So,
but it was the same narrative, right? Like he blocked in college, but people were like, he's just a move tight end. He's an Aaron Hernandez or whatever.
Yep. But was a good run blocker. And then another guy who was actually an elite run blocker in college, but clearly just a big wide receiver, Evan Ingram, who I've got at 234. So, even lighter. You do have Chigakonkwo as well, Ladarius Green in this weight range, Gerald Everett.
All of my guys.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily good, but Ladarius Green comes out and I'm like, oh no. Max Williams and Ladarius Green, we're digging up all the guys out.
Yeah. I was excited about Green too. But yeah, so it's kind of a hit or miss weight, but there actually are two guys, Reed and Ingram, where you're like, man, these are huge hits and huge hits early in their careers too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, Fannin is extremely fun.
Jordan Reed.
I just want the NFL. Fall in love, NFL.
Yeah,
come on.
I know. Jordan Reed, notably one of the probably biggest. So we've got in the last 2 years, we got Laporta and Bowers. They're two of the biggest fantasy tight end hits. Jordan Reed in his breakout season in the NFL was going in like what would be the equivalent in best ball terms of like the 17th round, and was the tight end one overall.
He was sick.
For
he dealt with concussions and kind of like limited his career, but man, he was awesome.
Yep. So moving down to kind of these other tight ends, you mentioned the next two kind of up, I think for most people, Elijah Arroyo and Mason Taylor. My concerns with these guys are they are the look like Tarzan, play like Jane, more so on Elijah Arroyo. That I think Taylor's a little bit, I know Taylor was a little bit more productive, and Arroyo is the guy where let me cite you shout out
Taylor
Dave.
Wasn't that much more productive. I think Arroyo, I think of all of them, Arroyo had the best season this past year. Yeah, Arroyo had the slightly, if you look at dominate rating of Arroyo, and it wasn't good, 16%.
Right.
Neither of them.
We're talking about different levels of stink on shit here with these guys. Yeah, I was wrong. I thought Mason Taylor was much higher than this. 1.24 yards per route run. Just absolutely atrocious. And Arroyo was 1.6. So, these are not good. 1.6 I could like possibly live with, but what Arroyo feels so much like to me is the Jatavian Sanders of last year, where we got like, he's on this, he like I said, looks like Tarzan, moves like Tarzan. You get excited about it. He is the body and the movement of what an NFL tight end is supposed to look like. He comes from Miami. So his like box score stats don't look awful because they're one of the highest scoring offenses in the country. He's attached to that, but like he's running like every route and really not doing anything with it ever. So like there's not, and I would love to make the excuse, right? The like, oh, he had bad quarterback play, or oh, he was playing right? He was playing alongside Malik Neighbors. He was playing, and it's like he doesn't have a single excuse as to why he wasn't more productive.
He dealt with a knee injury early in his career.
I mean this year. I mean this year. I apologize. Yeah. Like he got Cam Ward, and like Restrepo's fine. The other wide receivers are fine. They're good college players. There isn't anything like they're pulling him away from why couldn't he be more productive on a team that's scoring 45 points every single game.
Yeah, that's fair. I think he hasn't played a ton of football, and he dealt with a knee injury. So it's like your bull case is this guy is now just starting to emerge. As he only played 10 career games prior to this past year in 3 seasons. So he's like really raw, but
I have 23. I have 23.
23
games.
Oh, there's only, fix your box score, Scott. Before this year, I have 22 career games. You have
36.
Okay, 36. All right. Well,
freshman year. So it looks like he played 12 games his freshman. I mean, he didn't do anything, but he played his freshman year, and then he kind of disappeared. So maybe that was the injury.
Interesting. That must be the injury. Box score Scout doesn't have that in, so I didn't realize that. Let me see. Well, so he did have like an okay year this final year, but yeah, you're hoping that he is now like, because of how much he flashed at the Senior Bowl as a route runner as well, where NFL scouts are just like, dude, this guy is. Oh yeah, he did play 12 as a freshman. That's weird.
5
catches.
Like, dude, this 5 catches.
Yeah, he had 11 career catches in 3 seasons. Don't love that. Which I thought was in 10 games, and looks like it's in
little worse.
20.
And he was a freshman. I'm not holding that. I'm not holding. Getting on the field at Miami for 12 games as a freshman is not necessarily. I mean, you'd prefer some production, but 18 years old playing 12 games in Miami is not necessarily a negative.
But anyway, he was flashing as a route runner, getting behind the defensive backs, really smooth. He dropped, I think, one of the ones that like people were, like, oh my God, look at this guy go, and they dropped the pass, so they don't love that. But he's like, yeah, I still am intrigued by him, but you want the NFL to kind of continue this love affair. Like it needs to materialize into day 2 capital, where he wasn't really seen as that guy before the Senior Bowl. I don't think he was seen as in the mix, but was he going to go second round? No. And now he's like making a move on the second round, and maybe as the tight end 3 in the class, which is great. That's exciting. And then Mason Taylor, it's almost like you get your discount Colston Loveland in Arroyo, and you get your discount Tyler Warren in Mason Taylor. But there's a big reason for that discount. Well, what I just mean is in terms of the archetype.
Like you bought Tyler Warren and they gave you Mason Taylor for free.
We have Mason Taylor at home. We don't need Tyler. We have Mason Taylor at home. It really is. Just in terms of the archetype, it is quite disrespectful. But you have, if you just think about like what these players are bringing, you're betting on kind of like this guy's a pass catcher with Arroyo, who didn't produce and is going to go, if we're lucky, round 2, but he definitely won't go round 1, and Loveland will. And then we get Mason Taylor, same deal, hoping for round 2. Round 3's fine. Warren will be gone probably in the first half of round 1. But like, he's a tight end. He's going to plug into tight ends. He's going to do all the tight end stuff. You don't have to like Warren. You just like, he's just your classic Y tight end. He blocks. He does the stuff. You're not like worried about like a NFL coach being like, I don't know how to use this guy. With Arroyo, maybe there is something, because you're like betting like he's starting to emerge. He's becoming this great route runner, like, but he doesn't have like a ton of experience versus literal Jason Taylor's son does all the things. Like, he's just going to plug into an offense. And so I've actually been a little bit more intrigued by Taylor, just because I'm at the end of the draft. I'm like, this dude's probably a starting tight end by the end of the year. And that's worth a lot. Like, Will Dissly was a starting tight end by the end of the year, and that was sick.
Yes.
You know, that really helps. So just like, I have so many other things I'm trying to get right.
We're making fun of Theo. Theo was playing tight end with Drew Lock and Tim Boyle and shit.
Yeah, good point.
And like, not totally useless in fantasy.
Yeah, so he's kind of your Theo in a 20-round format. It's not the worst thing. But yeah, I mean, these guys are very like there's a reason we're talking about them right now in best ball, and it's because we're in a format that has 20 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And tight end can always get a little hairy, and if you're looking for a rookie, I don't have like a whole lot to add. I guess I should say on the Arroyo thing, I always do get cautious about the Senior Bowl stuff when it doesn't come back with production again. So here's some names that have gotten hyped at the Senior Bowl. Okay. So Ladd got it. Cool, right? You're like, you can understand that. Pearsall, Puka, right? Tank Dell. But then when you go look at those guys, you go look and you're like, well, yeah, I also have like 3.4 yards per route run in the SEC. And like, Puka was always productive. We look back and we think about Puka, like, oh, he came out of nowhere. And like, he did. But it was very weird, right? It was like the guy who's hurt for 4 years. Yeah. Every time he stepped on the field, he was good.
Yards per hour was sick.
Every time Puka stepped on the field, he was good from early day, right? He was a big recruit, went to UW, right? Went to Washington, then goes to BYU. He was like a real deal player. He just was like never on the field. Ladd was very similar, but at Georgia. Not a big recruit. He's a walk-on, but but every time Ladd got out there, you're like, my God, this dude is a monster, but he was hurt all the time. There's those guys, right? Tank's little, right? Tank went to Houston and he's 160 pounds. So like, we discount him, but he was productive as shit at Houston. But then here's a couple of names. Shout out Dave Gaudieri. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Last year, some Senior Bowl standouts. Roman Wilson, who like, okay, he got hurt, but still, even when he came back, he was never a part of the offense. Malachi Corley, Luke McCaffrey. I don't remember him
standing out that much, but yeah.
Luke McCaffrey, I do remember. I felt the Luke McCaffrey thing because he was ends up on Washington.
Brother, dude. I mean,
and I know exactly. It's CMC's brother, and I'm like, he's gonna play the slot for
Jason Taylor's son and CMC's brother. How could either one fail?
How could they possibly fail? Well, it's because they sucked in college. And then speaking of the perfect segue, Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son.
Yeah, Jerry Rice.
Flashed at the Senior Bowl, right? And Bo Nix was bad. I remember the Bo Nix. That's what Dave says. Bo Nix was bad at the Senior Bowl, right? Inaccurate. We were like, everybody's like, accuracy is his thing, and he was inaccurate at the Senior Bowl, so he's going to stink. Well, turns out Bo Nix is pretty good at the NFL level. So I always try to take it with a grain of salt, and that's why I want like at least some. If you're like reasonably productive and then you flash, I'm like, okay, like maybe I can forgive a little bit of the lack of production. But when you're just like you don't do anything in college, and then it's all like, oh, I watched him for 1 week in Mobile and he was cooking dudes. It's like I really struggle to get my head around that. Right when every
it's easier at tight end though. At tight end, we're like.
That's true.
You just like do a little and it goes along. You do a little in the 20th round and it's at the end of the year. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. So, and I do think there's a little bit of difference between guys who like had some flashes of the Senior Bowl and kind of were the talk of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually way more interested in Jack Bech than I thought was possible based on his profile.
Yeah.
I'm like, but he might go second round. He might go second round in the draft. Like, that is very live. He's probably more round 3, but I doubt he falls to round 4 now. And he's got the profile of like a 7th rounder. So, but
correct.
If I can take in the 20th round or maybe 19th round or whatever, and I've taken plenty. I haven't drafted so much this week. I don't know if he's moved up, but previously I'd taken a bunch of Jack Bech late, and he's completely free, and he might go second round in the draft. So it's just like, that guy, second round pick's good opportunity.
Yep.
You know, so if you're like the talk of the Senior Bowl, and Arroyo at tight end was the talk of the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy everyone, and I listened to a bunch of stuff, and it was like, you know, even if you're not like who's the standout player at any position, his name was coming up.
Right. So top 5. If they listed 5 guys, he was in there.
He was in there,
as you mentioned. Was in there.
Besh, Green on the defensive side.
You know who was terrible, which we'll get to in a moment. Not terrible all around, but I could not shake because we talked about run blocking with tight ends, and when we get to running backs, Ollie Gordon in pass protection. Every time I saw somebody tweet about Ollie Gordon, it was Ollie Gordon just got wrecked in pass protection, and then I'm like, okay, it's just some guy tweeting something and whatever, but then clips start coming out, and you want to talk about wrecked? He was getting run fucking over. He was on his back. Like every clip, Ollie Gordon's on his back in pass protection. I'm like, Bucky stood up more in pass protection in the NFL. He's 175 pounds, dude. Like why is Ollie Gordon on his back in every rep of pass protection?
Yeah, you don't want to flash like that either. You don't want to be the guy that everyone is like, I don't even know what good pass protection looks like, but this is bad.
The trends I remember from the Senior Bowl are Elijah Arroyo is apparently the greatest route running tight end of all time. Yeah. Jack Besh is uncoverable, and Ollie Gordon can't block a fucking soul as a running back.
Yeah, Mike Green just destroyed that formerly first round offensive tackles hopes, and Shamar Stewart's awesome, and then Tahj Johnson's uncoverable, and Ollie Gordon can't block him. The worst part for Ollie Gordon was that at one point they had Tahj Johnson playing edge, and he was blowing up Ollie Gordon. and Ollie Gordon's got like 80 pounds on Tahj.
They brought the smallest guys out to see, like, this is like a meme. They were like, how small can the guy be that blows up Ollie and pass pro? They're like, Tahj, well, you're the smallest we got, dude. 150 pounds. And Ollie on his back yet again.
Not great.
Oh, shoot.
But you're right. I mean, it's just one thing. I didn't have any interest in Elijah Arroyo. Like you couldn't. I was like,
same.
I wouldn't have considered drafting him at all. And now I'm like, shit, the guy might be a second round pick. So we should probably draft him occasionally.
Any other tight ends like at all of interest? I just want to toss a couple of quick names that I don't necessarily think are like big board viable. I don't even think I have them ranked. Well, I have Gunnar Helm ranked. So I shouldn't say that. I have Gunnar Helm ranked.
I don't, but I could see him becoming relevant.
20th round, right? I think if we're having the Arroyo, Mason Taylor conversation, I think Gunnar Helm is like in a tier with those guys. We'll see what the NFL thinks, but I think like my assessment of a football player of Gunnar Helm, I think he's in that tier. Yeah. 2 guys who I actually kind of like, but so. I don't mean to open this can of worms, but they just happen to be in this like archetype of the player that I like. They remind me of like an Eric All type prospect that's like flawed, like again flawed, injured. You know, like I said, I'm not trying to bring that up, but just like a weird kind of prospect, whether it was injuries or what have you. But Brant Keithy from Utah was like really productive for his he's old as shit, but he was really productive for his time at Utah, and injuries he had another bad injury again this year, so that's why.
Now are you using total production for this?
Yeah,
in his 6 seasons.
Yes, exactly. In his 14 seasons of college football. I
think
he's
56 career college games.
I think he's our age. He's like the Velus Jones of tight ends, but like basically. He was the go-to guy at Utah for like a long time in the passing game. They did a little bit of Wildcat and stuff with him too. I just think he's like it's another.
No, he was good.
Like,
he was blocked by Travis Kelce for a while, but ultimately.
Yeah, exactly.
Once Jason Witten got out of his way,
I was just gonna say Jason Witten, you motherfucker. So once Jason Witten retired, then great. Brant Keithy, but
Mike Ditka got.
I think he's good at football. It's just like I think he's stuck around because of all the injuries and all that kind of stuff. So is that necessarily a good thing? No, he's going to get drafted. I just don't know. You know, it's just like some names to keep an eye on. And then if there's an Iowa tight end, He has to get mentioned in the tight end section, and I don't know how to. I don't know if it's Luke Lachey. I apologize, Luke. I don't watch a lot of Iowa football, so I don't know how to pronounce your name. But I was kind of excited about him heading into this season. I thought he was going to have a pretty big year, and again, also injuries. Iowa, total incompetent passing game, so he wasn't particularly good this year. But he had a lot of hype coming into the season, and so just another guy that I think is going to get drafted. And Iowa's tight end U. So if you get into a dynasty format or something, these guys are maybe like potentially last round picks or something.
Do you have any interest in Oronde Gadsden? Davis, I know, likes him.
I don't think he's like if you have any concerns about Fannin playing tight end in the NFL, you have to have like a million concerns about Gadsden playing tight end in the NFL. He's basically just a wide receiver. Like even at Syracuse, he was basically just a wide receiver. So that's my concern. He was like my highest owned tight end in college football, best ball. Yeah, like I play in a couple season long leagues with some buddies for college football. And I've been drafting Gadsden for years. Like he was an awesome college football, like tight end, DFS play, all that kind of stuff. But it's because he's a wide receiver.
He's a wide receiver.
He's just a wide receiver who is categorized as a tight end.
I haven't been drafting him, but I'd be kind of curious if he makes some noise and it's like going to be, a tight end.
He should have gotten mentioned by me because he's a good receiver. He's a good receiver. It's just he has way more concerns than Fannin does for me about like does the NFL think he can play? Like I don't think he can. Syracuse didn't think he could play tight end. At least Bowling Green thought Fannin could play tight end. Syracuse was like, just play the slot, brother. Like you're just slot. He basically was a slot receiver, a big slot.
Okay,
at Syracuse.
Okay.
A good one.
Yeah,
a good one. He was good, but I don't know. He does.
I haven't drafted many of the guys after
his pops was in the NFL too.
Oh yeah,
a lot of lineage on this episode.
Should we go to running back?
Let's do it. This is the more fun. I'm gonna kick it to you first because is it possible at all to say anything negative about Ashton Jeanty?
Not really.
Is he worth discussing?
I mean. I don't really think there's many holes to poke. Like he kind of covers all the bases. Like he's 1.58 yards per route run, pretty good. Good breakaway yards, really elusive. I think like the film evaluations are really strong. I expect him to be pretty fast. Like just watching him play, you're like, I think you're going to test awesome. He's 216. I suppose like if you were going to make a bear case, you're like, is he really 216? Because he's on the shorter side. So like maybe he's more like.
He looks kind of like Devonta Freeman.
Yeah.
Like body type wise.
Body type wise. He's a little smaller that way. But I mean, he's got a really low center of gravity and he's really fast. So like, I guess you could say like, does the speed go quicker than other backs, like in 2-3 years down the line or something? Because he's not as tall. He's a little more, but like, I don't know. And also who cares? Who cares? Like, deal with that in 3 years, man. I don't know. Like, and also like, it just seems like we're way overthinking. Like I'm already way overthinking this. He's fast now and he's going to be fast next, he's going to be fast in the 2025 season. So I just don't really think there is. I mean, he's big enough. He's versatile. He breaks tackles and adds after breaking tackles, and he's going to get drafted very highly, potentially in the top 10. I mean, I think that's in play. And he's a lock to be a first round pick. He's going to get installed as a year one starter, week one starter, most likely. And he's taking jobs wherever he goes. If he lands with another guy that's like pretty damn good, Jeanty is going to be the starter by the end of the year. Like there's only a couple backfields where I wouldn't really feel like that's the case. So, I don't think there's really many holes to poke at all.
No, I'll just highlight a couple of things. As a true sophomore at Boise, he's in a quasi split. George Villani was playing. He wasn't like playing he played basically every snap this year for Boise, but as a sophomore he didn't, and still had over 1,900 total yards, 600, almost 600 receiving yards. And so one hole that I think some people may poke is the receiving wasn't as good this year. I think that was entirely a issue with the offense and the quarterback and the way that they chose to use him. 23 catches this year for 138 yards. As a sophomore, 43 catches for 569 yards and 5 touchdowns. It was they were using him in different unique ways as a sophomore. And this year, probably because he had 2,600 rushing yards, is why they said, you know what? Let's just hand it to him. Let's just hand it to him. We don't got to make it more difficult. Let's just hand it to him. Because when he handed to him, he breaks 6 tackles and takes the shit to the house. It was the most fun I've ever had watching a college running back play. Like Bijan was awesome. Bijan wasn't this. This was like every time. I know he was in the Mountain West, but every time he touched the ball, you just kind of expected he was just going to house it. And for the first 8 weeks, he did. It was every game he had. We joke about the Saquon stuff. You want to know the second coming of Saquon? Just like, oh my God, how did he break those tackles and take it 80 yards to the house? It's this dude.
Yeah, man.
Bijan, I think
some of the runs are crazy. You're like,
Bijan is
oh,
a more
that's sick
nuanced.
that he got through that, and then he gets through more, and then he breaks to the sideline, and then puts on the burners after. It's like, whoa.
He is the slipperiest, most balanced runner I feel like I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just guys come up to these are, I know they're Mountain West guys or whatever, but these are a 220-pound safety flies downhill, smokes him in the quad, and it's like he didn't get hit. It's like he just bounces right off and keeps running. And he does that. He did that against higher level competition. They almost beat Oregon, who was the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, largely because of Ashton Jeanty. There's nothing to prove. It's kind of shocking to me in the big board that he's not a late first rounder.
I know, man. I agree.
I'm kind of shocked. So
big target.
I'm in. Yeah, as a non-running back, bro. I'm drafting him.
Yeah, I mean he's really good, and he's gonna probably play his best ball at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it's just I don't know. I mean, I know we just overdrafted Marvin Harrison at the 1-2 turn, but this dude, he's hard. He should be going higher. He should be going higher.
He's better at he performed better at his job even than and Marv was amazing. He was him and Neighbors 1-2 for the best wide receivers in the country their senior year. Marv didn't do this. What Jeanty did, and Marv was amazing, absolutely amazing. But he didn't do this. And Marv had he's not really fast, right? He's not really that good of an athlete, frankly, Marvin Harrison. So you had some things where you were like, okay, he's Devontae Adams was the Marvin Harrison upside case. Jeanty is he does everything. He said, okay, he's short. That's the flaw.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
But it doesn't matter that he's short. Yeah.
Again, maybe his speed will go when he's 28 instead of 30.
Right.
Or 27 instead of 29.
Which we don't care about.
What bearing does that have on
Not
anything?
right now. But when do we trade him in Dynasty? Which is the conversation for every running back.
Also, how many things will change, and how many more things will we know before that ever enters the discussion? It just doesn't matter. And it's really very. I mean, he's a super productive runner. He was incredibly efficient as a receiver in that second season that you mentioned. He had 3.19 yards per route run in that season.
It's just ridiculous.
And that was his productive season, right? So the year they actually use him as a receiver, he's sick as a receiver. And then they're like, actually, we don't really need to use you as a receiver. So how about we just use you as a runner? And then he goes nuts as a runner. It seems like he's really good.
He was also we don't get it. We can end on that, but he was also, people are probably like, why was he at Boise? Then he was a weird, one of those slips through the cracks. I believe military prospect or overseas international type prospect.
Okay.
That came over his senior year. I have to look it up again. I should have looked it up before we had this episode. But one of those sometimes these he's not like in Texas playing running back for 4 years to where they're like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. He's overseas and then he comes back. He's not like a big time high school player for 4 years that everybody's, 247 Sports has him, ranked highly. Yeah. It's like, so he goes to Boise, and he could have went, dude. If Quinshon Judkins can go to Ohio State, like, you don't think Ohio State called about Ashton Jeanty? Like, come on. Like, he could have gone anywhere. He could have gone to Bama. He could have gone to Georgia. He chose to stay at Boise this year. I think where running back gets fun is here at the second, the RB2 spot behind Jeanty. And that's because I think there's a lot of talented guys, and they all are kind of a unique flavor. A little Baskin Robbins action at the running back position this year. Who is yours? Who is your RB2 after Jeanty?
This is a spot where, honestly, I think it's kind of like whoever the NFL tells me the RB2 is the RB2 to me. Like, I'm not, my take is that these guys are all in the same tier, and that we don't want to be like overly precise about like ordering them. And so if you're going to let me have one of them at a discount, I'm going to take it. Now, I do think that there's probably an emerging gap where I previously would have said this is a 4-player tier: Treveyon Henderson, Omarion Hampton, Kaleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins. But it feels like Judkins is falling a little bit past those guys and kind of forming his own tier based on the draft capital, where you look at stuff like he's the most likely now, I think, to fall to round 3. And the least likely to go round 1, and probably like the least likely to go round 1 by a good margin. You've seen stuff with Kaleb Johnson, going round 1, or often he goes like really early round 2 to the Bears. There's been some connections there. That would be very exciting.
Yes, it would.
He's the type of guy who kind of fill that David Montgomery role, but then also be versatile enough to just kind of be like a true lead back. We know how Ben Johnson probably feels about DeAndre Swift, given that he benched him last time they were together. So
he took the job. He took the Bears job in spite of DeAndre Swift being.
I know. So, I mean, the new starting running back for the Bears could get like a lot of work, and that could be Johnson. But I think more the larger point is that Johnson looks like a pretty safe bet to go round 2, and there's a number of good landing spots in round 2. So I like him. He's been cheaper than Omarion Hampton, who's been kind of priced up as like the RB2 here, and I haven't taken as much. But if he were to fall, if it's like, oh no, it's actually Henderson that we have to play this through, and now you're getting Hampton a little cheaper, I'm going to take Hampton, right? If Henderson's too small, then I'm going to take a bunch of Henderson, right? If Johnson's too slow, I'm going to have a bunch of Johnson. So it's just, I don't think that any of these guys really stands out from the other two as prospects. And I honestly think Judkins, if there is a discount and he ends up going around 3, the NFL's in kind of a spot where a round 3 Judkins should have a pretty good chance of making a big impact year 1. Obviously, it depends if he lands behind a starter. Is he kind of a Trey Benson or something like that? But it could be the case that one of these other guys gets, lands behind someone else. Carolina drafts someone, and it's like, what? Why? It's like, because we like running backs. We think they're important.
Well, we know they like running backs. That is for sure.
Yeah. So Judkins could be your week 1 starter on the Raiders or something. Like he could be an absolute smash in the early 3rd. So I like all 4 of these guys. I think the profiles are a nice mix of, solid, talented players, some versatility. I think Henderson and Hampton probably have the most upside as pass catchers. Henderson probably in his own little mini tier, and then Hampton, and then Johnson and Judkins, particularly Johnson, look a little more like closer to Kenneth Walker or something. Right. Judkins has similar yards per route run, but ran a lot more routes. So I think he maybe has a bit more upside as a pass catcher, but pretty good breakaway numbers, especially for Johnson. These guys broke a lot of tackles, especially Johnson and Hampton. So I think they're all good prospects. They're all big, except Henderson. But Henderson might be. He's big enough. He's in like the 205 range, and he might.
The other guys are big. He's big enough.
Big. Yeah, the other dudes are like Judkins is listed 218, Johnson 225, Hampton 220, and they're like clearly kind of fit that like bigger back role. There again, you're not like no NFL team's gonna have to be like, how do I use this guy? Like they're like a classic downhill runner type of player. Henderson is a little bit more like that, but he might go first round ultimately if he runs in the 4.3s, which I think he could. And so you could have him maybe being used as like kind of a 1A type of guy, but in maybe a Jahmyr Gibbs type of way. And he has a ton of upside. I was a little bit more nervous about him when I was first beginning this because I was like, is he going to be like a late round 2, early round 3 guy that, you know, it's kind of like a committee back? Like, but if he's a late round 1 guy and gets installed as like the explosive, versatile starting running back who maybe, you know, kind of like what we hope from DeAndre Swift and what we got for DeAndre Swift for at least the end of his rookie year, then he's a smash. Yeah. Mm-hmm. None of these guys are, I think they're all targets basically.
We'll start with the negative. My one, and it's funny. Me, you, and Davis were messaging during the national championship game, which of course Ohio State won. And you and I had talked about this already, but I am a Treveyon Henderson bull and a Quinshon Judkins bear. And the national championship game went about as poorly as the game could for someone with that stance. Obviously, Judkins goes crazy, but it was really, to me, even like I think that game was actually like kind of the epitome of how I feel about those, that Judkins kind of needed just like the perfect usage. Like Judkins wasn't, he had, I believe, the one long run. He's just like not a game-changing level back. And I'm not necessarily saying like Hampton is or whatever, but the way Judkins took a huge step back in year 2 at Ole Miss and then transfers was like, I know he got the bag at Ohio State, so it's like, well, of course he would transfer there. But like, if Lane Kiffin didn't really want him and didn't want to give him the bag, and Ole Miss brought in a whole shitload of different running backs after he left, he feels a little bit just like good college running back who was like in some really good situations, you know, and got the ball a lot, which is like a sign of talent. I'm not saying he's not talented, but in a running back class of a lot of talented dudes, he's the guy who stands out the least to me in terms of like, even like watch him, like even that national championship game, he was scoring touchdowns on some plays that I'm like, brother, your reads are so slow. Like, put your fucking foot in the ground and get upfield. And like, that's what Henderson does. Like,
yeah. That's what Henderson does. Yeah.
Lightning in a bottle. Like you said, he's not the absolute biggest, but that dude came in as a freshman, true freshman at Ohio State and set the world on fire. And from that moment on, we were like, oh my God, when he's draft eligible, this dude's a first round pick, locked and loaded. Don't worry about it. And then he dealt with some injuries. And that's why they brought Judkins in, was because 2 years in a row, Henderson got banged up. And Ohio State's, you know, got all more money than God, right, to throw at NIL. So they were like,
they're trying to win a national championship.
Yeah, Judkins is in the portal. Let's go get another back. So if Treveyon gets hurt, because this is what happened, they also had another running back, Chip Trainum, who also was injury prone behind Henderson. So they were on like, you know, RB3, RB4 when they're trying to win a national championship. That was the Marv team with Kyle McCord and stuff. And so they were like, let's just go get another guy and let him split with Henderson. But I don't think that is like, Henderson's not doomed to be hurt in every single season. And running backs get hurt. It just happens. He is the guy to me that is like a potential truly difference-making level talent amongst these guys. I would be a little shocked if Hampton, Judkins, or even Kaleb Johnson, who I really, really like, were looking, you know, back in 5 years and we're like, yeah, this dude's a top 3 running back in the NFL. Would I be surprised if Henderson was that? Yeah, because that's an unlikely thing. But I think if one of them were to do it, it would be him. I think he is that level of potential talent. Just a couple of quick other things. We talked about pass protection at running back. The nice thing about all of these guys is that they can do it. small concerns about Caleb Johnson just because Iowa doesn't pass. So like he doesn't have a lot of opportunities to pass protect. But there's a really good video out there of Treveyon talking about coming back to school and focusing on the passing game part of football because he knows how important it is at the NFL level and like taking pass protection very, very seriously. And like those are like really little stupid things. Like it's just an interview, but like that stuff matters to me, right? Like Travis Etienne came back. Now, I don't know how good Travis Etienne is at the NFL level anymore, but Etienne came back to school at Clemson when he probably could have left early. And he was like, it's because I know I need to work on my pass protection and my pass catching. And it's like when those guys know it and I know that they set out to work on it, that little stuff like matters to me, right? Like, I care about that. And so he just checks like every box except split with Quinshon Judkins as a senior. like that's the only thing that he doesn't check. Efficiency, right? Early breakout, dominated the Big Ten as an 18-year-old freshman. Like every box is checked. And home run hitter, right? If there's one guy that can hit a home run amongst other than Jeanty, amongst all these running backs, he's next.
Probably going to be fast. If they both test, I think he's faster.
I think he's faster than Jeanty.
He's I mean, he's like 10 plus pounds lighter. Jensen's listed at 216. He's listed at 205. We'll see what the actual weights are, but I think he's sub 4.4, and I think Jeanty might be, but Henderson at the top gear, just it's like it jumps off the screen. You're like, this dude is fast. He gets up to speed pretty quickly as well.
He's like Brees in that way. Like watch Brees like hit the second level, and you were like, oh, like yeah, like they have that. Once the gear, once they put that baby in drive, right? It's like we're in neutral. Once they put that baby in drive, it's like, holy shit, man! Those first like 3 steps are nuts. And like you said,
it reminds me of Darren McFadden, who you know, in his prime, I was just like,
that's a good comp.
Yeah,
I loved McFadden.
And I loved McFadden. Like it never like he kind of couldn't ever piece it together for more than that one season. But like, God. When he got going, it was so fun.
Also, good receiver. I think Henderson is a good receiver.
Yeah. So that's he has that kind of speed. I think we'll see at the combine, but that's one of the reasons that I do think. I probably should have him a slightly higher because like he could be a riser throughout the process as he does well in the combine. He's already getting round 1 buzz. I think. Of these backs, he's probably the most likely to go round 1, including Hampton, who's been kind of held up as the RB2 in this class by the fantasy community throughout. But I haven't seen a ton of him going like round 1. I haven't heard much round 1 buzz on Hampton. It's more like he's just a really solid bet to go round 2, like really strong bet to go round 2. But he's a little bit more of kind of the 2-down runner, like again, kind of that Montgomery style of, if Henderson is a Gibbs, then Hampton is a Montgomery, Kaleb's a Montgomery, Judkins is a Montgomery, right? So you get those, but he's, I think, very safe in that, he's 220 and he's really good at that. So a team is like, we need a downhill starting running back. We're going to draft Omarion Hampton in the 2nd round, and boom, he's our starter right away. He's just like,
every down player,
yeah. And you're just like, boom, I've got a guy who's like a 2nd, 3rd round value, and I took him in the 5th round. So I do like Hampton, but Henderson, I like the case because of the pass catching. You get the potential for the draft capital, potential for the pass catching, and then the speed. It's like who's scoring 24 points to close the year, and you're like heading into the matchup like, well, I can lock these 20, 25 points in. It's probably Henderson. I mean, it could be, and here's why I would say mixing up these bets is important, though, is that like Caleb Johnson lands on the Vikings.
I was just going to say whoever lands on the Vikings are going to take one of these guys, and they're a 2nd round pick in May.
It's like, what if he's the Kyron Williams on the Vikings? What if he's the Chase Brown on the Vikings? Like Quinshon Judkins is as good as Chase Brown, but he's on the Vikings. And they just using he's Alexander Madison from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever on the Vikings, right? Like he's just like he's got the whole role. And I think there's a number of spots where maybe not as exciting as the Vikings because of the quality of the offense, but where you just like the Cowboys, the Chargers, where they just, I mean, those are both really exciting. The Raiders less exciting, but like could feel a lot better in August than it does now. And he's the whole backfield. And so I think there you just like, you don't want to be light. I ended up looking at my stuff. I was like, I haven't drafted Caleb Johnson. I'm pretty sure I have, and the draft got thrown out. But I drafted him in an FFPC.
That's an epidemic, by the way, right now.
It is a bit. It is a bit.
Happy
yeah.
the Super Bowl's over. The amount of people that apparently thought that this was a goddamn 20-round Super Bowl draft, like Jesus Christ, guys. We like you thought you were getting sick values on AJ Brown in the big board because you thought it was a Super Bowl draft. Like, open your goddamn eyes. Everybody's taking guys not in the Super Bowl. Jesus.
I know. I did a live draft with Daniel Raz, and we were like, maybe it won't get thrown out. And I just got the message today that it did. So it took a few days longer than I thought, but it did get thrown out. But yeah, I mean, I think landing spot, all of these guys are pretty similar, especially the Hampton, Caleb Johnson, and Judkins are all like such similar archetypes of backs, and it's like, which one lands in the best landing spot? Like, how could we possibly know? So mixing them up, and I think they're all targets. I got Caleb Johnson, the FFPC, in the 7th round, 703. I mean, there's just a lot of room to the upside on a player like this at that price. And I think Judkins went even later in this draft. Not to me, but yeah. So I'm trying to get all of these guys right now. The question for when Erik comes back is how big of a gap down is there to Skattebo? Because he's the next guy in the class that, I think maybe you could argue there's sort of a tier of 2 guys or 3 guys after this top 5, but Skattebo's certainly in that tier. The other guys I would nominate for the tier are Devin, Neal, and Dylan Sampson. And all 3 guys are a little shakier, maybe a little or to a lot shakier than the guys ahead of them, in terms of like they could go day 3, where I'd be pretty shocked if Judkins fell to day 3. Like, not blown away, I guess, but it would be very surprising to me. He just seems like such a, like they just trusted this guy in a national championship and he played great. Like he's not worthy of a 3rd round pick. Like that would be pretty weird.
Crush that Ole Miss as a true sophomore, ends up at Ohio State, good national championship. They just don't fall that far.
Right. But if Devin Neal tests poorly and is a 4th round pick, that wouldn't shock me. If Skattebo ends up as a 4th round pick, it wouldn't shock me. Dylan Sampson isn't actually like super fast. He's like mid 4.4s and he's undersized, falls to the 4th round. Wouldn't shock me.
He better be fast.
He better be really fast. Yeah. So
I think he is.
The floor,
I think he is, but he better.
I do too. The floor on these guys is all lower, but like if any one of these guys went ahead of Judkins in the draft, I wouldn't be shocked, right? Or went ahead, it's probably Judkins, but like they're the 5th running back drafted. I think all 3 of them are live to be the 5th running back drafted. Skattebo is kind of maybe the shakiest to be that. Because he sort of seems what he is. He just seems like he's going to go 3rd round. And he's like, not going to test very well. But man, the production, he's 225. So it's not like he's small at all. 1.57 career yards per out run on 18 routes per game. You got the versatility there. He dominated his backfield, 79% peak dominator rating, 67% career, which is pretty damn good. Not much of a breakaway runner, breaks a lot of tackles. So you get probably long speed major question mark, which I think limits his upside in terms of draft capital. But I don't think he'll fall like much past round 4 because he was so productive and he's like, I think going to be beloved by coaches. So kind of a big try hard guy.
Oh yeah.
And then he's a great receiver. So you have, you can trust him there. Although he's kind of terrible in pass protection. He's like,
have you watched some of his pass pro?
It's
reps?
So bad.
I don't really understand what he's doing.
He puts his head into the guy's chest.
He headbutts people
into their chest.
He literally headbutts people and lunges. It's one thing to like put your head down and like catch somebody. Sometimes it can be natural. I mean, he shouldn't have this natural instinct as a running back at Arizona State, but like, but like sometimes you're kind of whatever.
Yeah.
But like he he literally goes like this to try to headbutt people when they're coming in on pass protection. And I'm like,
Matt Waldman has been tweeting out links or tweeting out little video clips on
Follow
Blue Sky.
Matt Waldman. He posts all of this stuff on the Skattebo one is incredible.
Yeah. He's calling him Johnny Knoxville. He's literally like, here's Johnny Knoxville again, because he's like, look at how look how well positioned he is. He gets he's in the perfect spot for pass protection. He's got himself there. He understands where he needs to be. He's there. And then right at the end, he's like, bah. Like, why are you doing that? It's not good. So yeah, that definitely makes me nervous.
He's just crazy. I genuinely think he's just. Have you one of my favorite quirks about Skattebo? So full transparency, I have Sampson and Neal above Skattebo, but in the same next.
Yeah,
tier.
I get that.
They are my tier beyond those top guys. And I love Cam Skattebo. So I'm not trying to throw shade, but like he is definitely not a home run hitter. Of a runner. He will get hawked if he does get into the open field, he is going to get hawked at the NFL level. He actually has good burst. The burst is better than you think that it is. It's just he's short and fat, so like the long speed is just God didn't give him a sprinter's body. Okay, so he's not going to have the long speed. But he just has like a few like small little weird quirks. One of my favorite things that he does, other than the headbutt, is it makes me feel like he's nuts. Is like after a run, like especially like he takes a big hit or whatever, he's walking back to the huddle. He's just going like this. Like he shakes his head. Like
I love it.
He keeps shaking his head, and I'm just like, is he okay? Is he okay? Like he's psychotic.
He's hyping himself up.
And he is great. If you ever watch, he's nuts. Like he gets into it with his coaches and stuff, which maybe that's a negative thing, but he's intense. But he's an intense. I mean, they love him. He's an intense, like hardcore football player. So I just have concerns about the NFL. You know, I think, like you said, I think that he has a floor in terms of draft capital. He's not going to be a 6th-round pick or whatever. Yeah. But like, I don't think that there's a ceiling necessarily either to where we're like, holy shit, he just went, at the top of the 2nd round because somebody loved him that much. I don't think that he has that to him. So the path to like, I think his path's going to be a little bit more difficult. I think someone could fall in love if Dylan Sampson runs really well. And the guy who I've fallen in love with is Devin Neal.
Devin Neal, yeah.
I think Devin Neal. I think if you turn on the Devin Neal tape, my concerns with him, if I'm starting with the negative stuff like before, are I'm not sure how he's going to test. He's not super fast. He's not slow.
I don't think he'll test very well.
He's not slow, but he's not like, I don't think he's a long speed runner either. I think he's just like you just watch him and like that dude just knows how to play running back, like knows how to run.
It's kind of the Bucky Irving thing. Like he's a really good football player.
Bigger Bucky. Like he's not.
He's bigger, but he's 220. Yeah, he was 220 at the Senior Bowl.
He doesn't have Bucky juice, but like think about Bucky with a little less juice at 220. Yeah, like that's kind of I think just a really goddamn good football player. Came into Kansas. Kansas has been a little better the last couple of seasons. When he came into Kansas, they were fucking awful. Like this was bottom of the barrel Kansas. He came in and was the starting running back as a true freshman at Kansas and led the backfield. He was not that efficient as a freshman, but God forbid an 18-year-old on a 2-win Kansas team, isn't hyper efficient. But he dominated the backfield from freshman to senior year. He got better every single year. They continued to build. Again, you are building the plane metaphor. They built the plane out of him more and more and more. Like other guys got the ball for the first 3 years, and this past year he really took over. He's not an like super like fluid receiver, but he's like good enough to where they were like, yeah, we just got to throw him the ball because we just got to get him the ball. He's our best player, right? Like, and he's just like I said, just turn it on and watch him, and you're just like, this dude is smooth. Like Cam Skattebo is not smooth.
He's not smooth. That's kind of the beauty of it, is how smooth he is. He's like
Devin Neal like is like maybe the smoothest running back in this class. Like you watch him and you're just like, God, he just every cut is flawed. Like it looks effortless, right? When he makes all these cuts, all these reads, he's patient. He's a good zone runner.
I didn't believe the weight. I thought he was listed at 215, and I was like, he's probably 205. because he looks really fluid, but then he's 220 at the Senior Bowl. So okay, this is like potentially the nice thing about the size, even if he's 215 at the combine, is that it lowers the bar on what he needs to run and all of that and jump. Great and I don't think he doesn't look super athletic, but I think he's functionally athletic. I think it's enough. And unlike with Kerrane and Bucky, where they're undersized and then they don't have good testing numbers, and like because a lot of the stuff we factor in weight, the RAS all of a sudden is like 4 or lower, right? It won't be so bad with Neal because he's got enough size to where if he's at 4'6", 240 or something, like okay, that's fine.
He kind of reminds me of bigger, faster Kerrane, like not significantly faster, but just that like I was in love with Kerrane, one of my rare W's. Okay, so stick with me. But like you watched Kerrane and you were like, okay, I just watched him, run 60 yards and get hawked, from the backside. So but like people don't remember the things he did to get the 60 yards. They're like, oh, well, he's too slow, right? He got hawked, and you might see that from Devin Neal on occasion on some of these runs.
Yeah,
but he makes shit happen. Like he's sound enough in pass protection. He's sound enough as a receiver. That's very Kerrane-y. Now Kyron's kind of a fucking tank in pass protection, but like which is crazy at 195 pounds.
I know.
Like, he's a good short yardage runner and pass protector, and he's little. It doesn't make it's his best two skills. I don't really get it. Devin Neal is not quite
big butt. You got a big butt. I think that's helpful for that. Yeah,
but Neal is just like thick but smooth. And like, I don't know, these are all very just opinionated, watch the tape type takes, but also the production is through the roof, dude. Like 4 years of highly productive at Kansas, like to be a running back at Kansas and just crush for 4 years. Like, I don't know.
I think he also has upside if he tests well. He's a guy that we're not expecting will test super well, but like
what if he runs 4.48 or something? We're like,
4.5, 4.55, 4.55 at 220. Boom.
Because I think he's going to run like 4.65 or something.
Yeah, I think he's probably 4.65 and not particularly good jumps. But if he has like 120-inch broad jump, 35-inch vertical, and runs a 4.55, he could be a second-round pick.
100%.
Like, he really doesn't need to test that well. He just needs to test good enough. Like, this is a solid NFL. Okay, this dude's a solid NFL athlete at that size with this production and this tape. He could go second round. So 100%. Devin Neal's, I think he is a very strong pick. He was a smash early in these drafts, man. He was going in the 140s, 150s.
He was last round on Drafters. Drafters just launched Devin Neal, last round pick. It was like, oh my god, got to get in there just to scoop the last round Devin Neal.
Wow, he's still 129, and that's good. That he is a target still.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think maybe we could get a tad more aggressive on him. I think just because he does have upside for like in a way that Skattebo, I agree that does not really have upside to, because Skattebo's just not going to test well. Skattebo's going to run 4.6 or slower.
I would if he is close to 4.6, I would be. I mean, if Kerrane couldn't run 4.6, I'm not sure.
Kerrane was what 4.65.
Like like I think we're testing closer to 4.7 for Skattebo.
That'd be over 4.7 is kind of a scary place to be for a running back. It's
scary.
You can be a really good college player if you run like 4.72. That might be it. So from that perspective, Skattebo's kind of low floor because it's not impossible.
He is a really good football player, though.
Really good football. The thing. So I like to look at the breakaway stuff. I think that's. I mean, it's important to be able to actually like have some explosiveness in the running game. Like if all you're bringing is just kind of chunk play, as a college player, that's a red flag. That's where like what do NFL plotters look like? They're like they didn't have much breakaway ability in college.
Najee. I think we've been talking about Najee for 4 years or worse. Yeah, but I'm like first round pick type, right? It's
sure.
It's like why was Najee? Why did people hate on Najee being a first round pick? It's like we know he's good. Like I don't think Najee is like a completely awful. Like he's an NFL running back. He does some things okay. It's just like he's not a difference maker because he's never gonna, change the game because of him.
Yeah. But and that's one area where Skattebo is it's like a major red flag where he just does not have the breakaway ability. This was a red flag for Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery. I'm trying to find some actual plotters. David Cobb, a real big plotter.
Mm-hmm. God, we're bringing out all the hits on this.
Wayne Gallman, 32% breakaway percentage over his career.
Okay.
Najee was very much here, 32%. Trying to find another plotter. Mike Davis. Mike Davis is actually a pretty good comp for Skattebo.
That's a legit good comp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like Mike Davis was good. Mike Davis was good. Did everything, right? When CMC got hurt, right? Mike Davis was a 5th-round pick in Best Ball Mania because he was this Cam Skattebo archetype, and CMC left, and they just gave him
fed him targets. Mm-hmm. Benny Snell, another big plotter. Matt Jones, I think he had a year starting for Washington out of Florida, if I'm remembering right, but then was just an uber plotter. Chase Brown, actually a 34% breakaway percentage, which is the same as Skattebo. So it's not like, and Kyron Williams was at 35%. So it's not like the end of the world. It is a red flag. Roshan Johnson, 36%, another, kind of plotting type.
Big time plotter.
Yeah. So there's some serious concern there with the breakaway stuff. But when you look at his elusive rating, his ability to actually break tackles, that is extremely high. 152 career elusive rating. This is like generally a metric that goes up to 100.
Yep.
Ashton Jeanty, the only guy higher in the class, 185.6 career elusive rating for Jeanty. Like, Jesus. Yeah. Oh, but he's too short. Let's not do it. No one's saying that.
For what it's worth,
let's make a straw man that is like, short.
I'm trying to think of like how to describe that accurately. It basically means the first guy never took him down.
Yeah.
Ever. Ever. Like 180 is like it's truly hard to describe. So like you said, a 100 like scale. That's
I think it might be the highest in my in the database that
I've never heard of anything that high. For reference, if there's any baseball fans or baseball nerds, right? Baseball is a very stat heavy sport. There's a stat that's like my favorite stat, kind of like my yards per route run and all that kind of stuff in football. It's called WRC plus. It's called weighted runs created plus. It's basically a metric on a 100 is average, and the intent is to say, okay, if 100 is average, how much do you bring to your team above or below average, right? How many runs are you creating? Only offense, so it's not defense. Like, how many runs are you creating, right? So, like, the Otanis of, like, 180 is like Shohei Ohtani. You're like peak Mike Trout, right? It's like that. That's what the elusive rating is saying about Jeanty. Is like, this is the best player. When we use generational, that's what we're talking about. 180 elusive rating.
It's crazy. It's honestly crazy. I think the only guy that
was elite. But Skattebo
was elite. Yeah, also elite. The only guy I have higher than Jeanty in here is Antonio Gibson, who had like 100 career touches or something.
Can we fucking stop with all of these busts that I was obsessed with?
Sorry, man.
One of the first videos I ever made for Spike Week was the year Antonio Gibson was a 2nd-round pick on Washington, and I was like, loved him as a prospect, loved him and they were going to hand him the keys, right? Well, we thought they were going to hand him the keys to the backfield, and I'm like, and what's his name? Their head coach at the time was like comparing him to Christian McCaffrey and everything. Yeah. And I'm just like, just feed it to me, brother. Like we are all in on 2nd-round Antonio Gibson and the Trey Lance and Antonio Gibson, like 2 of the single worst takes I've ever had.
Yeah. No, I was all in on Antonio Gibson in the 2nd season. Yeah. So highest I've got Antonio Gibson, then Jeanty, Trey Benson, Darwin Thompson, Bijan Robinson, Dwayne McBride, Javonte Williams, Cam Skattebo, Tahj Spears. So it's a pretty good list to be on there with the elusive rating. That's career elusive rating. So Skattebo can break tackles and he can catch the ball. Kind of like I've been kind of dreaming on him as like big Eckler, thick Eckler.
Yeah.
But that's obviously an extremely bullish way to view him. The potential for him to ultimately be like high profile Dwayne McBride does feel somewhat real. Although McBride was a terrible pass catcher in college, and so you do have
horrible.
That pass catching versatility is a life raft. If he runs a 4.72, 4.75, but he still could go day 3 as a pass catching type,
and goal line back. Yeah, that's true. He's a tank at the goal line, man. He's an absolute tank.
Yeah, Bucky Irving, by the way, not too much further down this list. Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne. It's good. It turns out it's good to break a lot of tackles.
If your job is to run with the ball forward and the people trying to tackle you can't, generally good. Generally good. A good thing.
Now, Dylan Sampson, where are you at on him? Because he feels like a little bit of the combo of like he's got the high ceiling that Skattebo lacks in terms of draft capital. I think Skattebo has a plenty high ceiling if he's installed as like a 1A with the pass catching. But in terms of draft capital, the ceiling isn't there. But I also think he has that same low floor as Skattebo in terms of falling to day 3, because if Dylan Sampson is like a 4.49, I don't think he's going day 2.
He's cooked.
Yeah, because he's small. Dylan Sampson is one of the, and this is a big running back class, but Dylan Sampson is one of the guys actually around 200 pounds. So he's and the other thing with him is that like his reputation, like why are we talking about Dylan Sampson? It's because he's really fast. But what if he isn't? Because I don't know, man. When I watched him, like when I watched Treveyon Henderson, I'm like, this dude's really fast. We watched Dylan Sampson. He doesn't look slow, but he's 201. That's his listed weight, 201. And I'm like, track star, kind of built on the speed. He doesn't look like he's in the 4.3s to me.
I always struggle with the Tennessee guys. So he's from Tennessee, and split the backfield with Jalen Wright last year and outperformed Jalen Wright, at least from an efficiency basis. And also, if you watched, you were like, look, Jalen Wright's good, but you're like, maybe give this Sampson fella the ball a few more times. And that's it. He's kind of been a favorite of mine since 2 years ago with Jalen Wright. I really wasn't that big of a fan of Jalen Wright. I'm not saying this is a good process, but I'm just saying when you watched, I was like, he's not the best back on this team. So like, I'm not, can he take over an NFL backfield? I don't know. As I keep drafting Jalen Wright, by the way, in the big board, I think he's a good pick, but I think Sampson is maybe the most difficult, other than Ollie Gordon, I guess, is the most difficult evaluation in this running back class because, like I said, I think when you watch, there's times where you're like, okay, yeah, this dude's that dude. And then there's other times where you're like, yeah, that was a nice long touchdown run, but it didn't, like you said, it didn't look like Treveyon, didn't look like breakaway, like superstar, certainly not Jeanty, whatever. Kaleb Johnson has some breakaway runs where you're like, damn. I know he's not a 4.4 guy.
I think he could be 4.5s though, and his size, that's awesome.
He has some pretty incredible breakaway runs. Kaleb Johnson does for his size and theoretical lack of speed. Dylan Sampson, coming from Tennessee, like I said, is just a really tough eval. Like think about Jalen Hyatt that they had at wide receiver, and then also think about Jalen Wright last year. They played the most bizarre, totally not translatable offense, the Josh Heupel offense. It is so Gabe Davis played in this at UCF. Dylan Gabriel actually in this quarterback class was the quarterback at UCF, and it's
for Gabe Davis,
crazy. I believe so.
He's played
he got hurt though. Gabriel got hurt.
Wait, seriously? Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was kidding because he's played like 6 seasons, but did they actually overlap?
We have to find this out now.
God.
So Dylan Gabriel was at UCF from 2019 to 2021. When was Gabe?
It might have been around 2019.
2019, yeah. So Gabe's final year, Gabe's junior year. Dylan Gabriel was his quarterback. Gabe's on his second NFL team, and Dylan Gabriel was his quarterback. Dylan Gabriel has played for 2 other college football teams since he played with Gabe Davis, and Gabe's on his second NFL contract in his second year with the Jets.
In his second year.
That's really goddamn funny. But yeah, so that's the team. So it's so hard to judge. It's also hard to judge. So like Ole Miss, right? We talked about like Trey Harris, talked about Quinshon Judkins as a sophomore popping off at Ole Miss, right? This is the school of Elijah Moore. This is the school of Jonathan Mingo, right? Tennessee is the school of Jalen Hyatt and the school of Cedric Tillman. And like all these dudes just, if you're like a good college player and you play in those offenses, they just put up crazy numbers. And it's really hard to judge exactly how they translate. I do think Sampson he's the first Tennessee running back where I'm like, okay, he's got the home run hitter. He's got enough size, right? The home run, he's small. That's what helps make him kind of the home run hitter, but he has enough size and enough power and enough nuance to his running game. It's not just like, oh, Heupel schemed it up with his crazy bullshit wide splits at wide receiver. So there's 5 guys in the box and they just ran. Right. He has enough nuance to his game and enough power actually at what I think he'll probably be 205 or something like that. Like enough juice and power to his game that I'm pretty in. He also caught more passes than most Tennessee backs have, which is really, they don't throw to their running backs. Like Josh Heupel doesn't throw to the running backs, and they threw it to him a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And so like there's just enough. He also, for the first time, for like really any Josh Heupel offense, consolidated the backfield in a pretty big way. There was really no one else that popped up. Obviously, other guys touched the ball. That's how football works. But it was like when it was, nut cutting time for Tennessee, like it was all Dylan Sampson, right? 29 carries, 30 carries. Like he had these crazy games, and that matters to me. And so to continue to be efficient in that where they were like, the offense was bad. It was like the first bad Tennessee offense in a long time. So they just said, things aren't going well. Dylan, bail us out, brother. And he did a lot. And then they ran into Ohio State in the college football playoff, and that went poorly. But I'm a believer, but to your exact point that you made earlier, like the floor is really low, like really, really. I believe in him, but I'm not totally like sold. If he just flames out in the NFL, I would not be shocked at all.
Yeah, I'm actually into him right now because of the price. So he's going 156 ADP, and I think that leaves a lot of room to the upside because of his draft capital potential. Like this could be a guy who tests. I could be wrong. Like this is why I dig into the numbers so much. Like I'm not trusting that. Like I'm like, he's not that fast. Like, would I be shocked if he did run a sub 4.40? No, I would not. He like has like legit high school track times that are blazing fast. Yeah. So like he has run extremely fast in the past.
He's a sprinter. Yeah,
he's a sprinter. So he might crush the 40. And if he crushes the 40, we're talking about a guy right now on Mock Draft Database has a consensus big board ranking of 96. Could he go in the 60s? Could he, be drafted in the second round? Absolutely he could. So, and then, and by the way, early third round, if he lands in one of these backfields that could really use a running back in the early third or something, great. I'm into that, and you get that at like in the 150s. This is a potential day one starting running back. Like he in this next tier of guys, the Skattebo, Devin, Neal, Dylan Sampson tier. I think these are fairly safe. They're safe-ish. They're not like super safe, but they're safe-ish. I think they're all going to go most likely before round 5, or at least before round 6. And they have upside to go second round or at least third round.
Right.
And to have a roll out of the gate and to have a big roll down the stretch. And you're getting that in the 150s. That feels pretty good because like I'm into this if we get the Bucky Irving setup, right? Like you end up behind a vulnerable starter. I'm into Dylan Sampson at this price, but there's a chance he doesn't have that guy in front of him. He's just from the jump like a starting running back. That is a home run in the 150s. He is undersized. He's probably just going to be a 1A. I don't see him as having the same ceiling because like, is he going to like fully carry the load? Like probably not. It's not impossible, but he could just like out of the gate be the guy that's kind of like an Aaron Jones type of guy,
Again, Ken Walker. You said Ken Walker before. That's another guy. Like he's got a lot of juice as an early down runner, but like he's not going to take the whole. We're not going to give him the whole thing, right? But like he's valuable because he's our lead runner.
60% of snaps, lead runner, gets used as a passer.
Dario Goombawale comes in on the fucking third downs, right?
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of a thing, but in the right situation,
a Tony Pollard kind of 1A type role, like that kind of role. But man, in the 150s, like, and if he's good, I mean, Bucky never really until the very end fully consolidated, and he was smashing well before he fully,
and they didn't want that. Rashad's just terrible.
Yeah, he's just bad. Right. So Sampson, I actually think is a really strong pick right now, as much as, I have some doubts. And I do think the floor is lower for sure, but like you get the discount. Like, do I get the discount on that? Like I do. He's like twice as many picks. How about twice as many picks from the end of that Judkins tier? That sounds great to me. So, and I think I'm getting a lot more safety than when we go to the next group. Like next group are, you could be a UDFA. I think that the bunch of the guys that we'll talk about after this could be UDFAs. Now they could be priority UDFAs, guys where like people are like everyone's kind of shocked that this guy fell out of the draft, but it just fell, But every single one of these guys, I think, is at least plausibly a UDFA, and some of them like will be UDFAs because it's a big ass group, and there's just like not enough teams that are going to draft running backs probably. So
do you think that my take is that is however you order Sampson, Neal? So Jeanty own tier, right? If we're just quickly tiering, Jeanty own tier, Henderson, Johnson, Hampton, Judkins, right? And next up in their own tier, Sampson, Neal, Skattebo. You can order all that shit however you would like to order it in those tiers, but those are the 3 tiers.
I think so. Yeah.
Then we get to this next tier. We all have guys that we like. They range from could be a 4th round pick to a UDFA. The whole fucking lot of them, like all of them. And like I said,
could be a 3rd round pick to a UDFA.
I would not be shocked about, honestly, okay, that's not the right. I would be shocked about a 3rd round pick, but I would be like, yeah, like one of these guys getting
one of these guys could be a 3rd round pick. Yeah, maybe 2, but
if Ollie Gordon had pass protected a little better in Mobile, I would not have been shocked. Right. But like,
what if RJ Harvey and
I fucking
Brashard Smith Harvey. were both 3rd round picks? Would that shock you? It wouldn't shock me.
Brashard Smith, if there's a Bucky, if we want to do the small little guy that's just good at football, it's Brashard Smith. He's a converted played wide receiver at Miami, goes to SMU, plays running back, and is the best player on SMU besides their quarterback. And like, it's just good. He's just good at football. He's too little, like he's way too little, but like, I don't know. But I thought Bucky was way too little. Turns out when you're just really good at football, would I be right? You want to talk about good at football? RJ Harvey is good at fucking football, dude. Like RJ Harvey is good at football. He took a disastrous UCF team. Disaster. I still can't figure out how he was so good this year on that team. They played like 4 different quarterbacks. You know what
part of it is? He's really fast.
Super fast.
He's really fast.
He is a like. So let's talk about RJ Harvey and the issues first. Certainly not a high volume pass catcher, not a particularly proficient pass catcher.
Good efficiency though. 1.47 yards per out run in his career. That's nice.
I think it's we throw it to him and he's just that dude. Yeah. And he makes shit happen, as opposed to, he's not Christian McCaffreying it up out there as a route runner. They're just like, he's our best. The whole offense is him. So let's just throw it to him. And then he breaks a couple tackles or whatever. We really don't know about pass protection with him. So he's also probably, in terms of like the Dylan Sampson thing you were talking about.
He's smaller too. He's 207.
He's not.
He looks thin.
He doesn't. I think he looks like a I bet you get that dude in the locker room and you're like, Jesus Christ, that dude is a tank, but he's only 205, or he might.
Yeah, it's more the leg. I think he looks like thin with it, but I mean, he's a sprinter. He looks like he's got like he's well built for what he does, which is moving very fast.
He is Cam Skattebo on a bad team. I don't mean like he doesn't do everything in the same way that Cam Skattebo does. They're very, very, very different. But like, if RJ Harvey was on a team that made the college football playoff and like a competent or organization, whatever you want to call them, like program, everybody be like, holy shit, this RJ, like if you played college football DFS or college football best ball, like RJ Harvey was like the smash of all smashes. Like on like second round pick in college football best ball, like always one of the most expensive players in college football DFS, despite the fact that like we never even knew who was starting at quarterback for UCF. They got a high profile transfer out of the portal, and he was fucking awful. So they're just rotating a bunch of dudes who can't throw. The defense doesn't respect them. They're a terrible team, and all RJ Harvey does is cook every single. I love those guys. It reminds me of, you probably remember we talked about Isaiah Pacheco, where I was like, I was just like, his situation is so bad. I know that now Harvey has the efficiency, but I know that the efficiency isn't great. I know that there's flaws, right? I know this, that, the other, but like when you can like rise up out of the fucking mud like RJ Harvey did and dominate, like it just always sticks with me. So there's a lot of flaws, there's a lot of things that we need to, exactly how fast is he? Exactly how big is he? Can he pass protect? Can he catch the ball? Right? Can he do all those things? But one thing I know is when the ball's in his hands, he's one of the better backs in this class when the ball is in his hands, and that matters to me. So he's probably my favorite cheap running back.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a podcast with Eric Froton, and we were going to record it tomorrow, but it'll be next week now. But he absolutely crushes the props, the weekly props and season long. But he's tracking these guys week to week and predicting what they're going to do. And I was asking him, before I got the, kind of the pod before the pod, I was like, hey, like, what about like this group of backs, like, RJ Harvey, and I mentioned a bunch of the other guys going in that range, and he's just like RJ Harvey, like, why did you say those other names to me? Like these, like those don't belong together. So we ended up moving RJ Harvey up quite a bit. And my initial concerns with him is that he looks like some serious scat back downside, where like he bounces stuff. Like you just watch him, like some of his better runs, he's like, there's a run where he like runs up like into the hole, and he's just like, nope, and like bounces out like all the way around, and then just like burns past everybody. And I'm kind of exaggerating it, but it's like you see, like you but literally like watch him, not that much. He's like, should I run this play as designed? Nah, I'm gonna bounce it way outside, really exaggerated, and I'm just way faster than everyone, so I don't have to. But some of these guys, like you watch Dylan Sampson run, smaller back, he runs between the tackles. I don't think he doesn't look like.
He never bounces
kind of a
shit.
scat
Sampson
back.
Samson doesn't bounce anything. They're polar opposite runners.
Yeah, even though Samson's probably smaller, but Harvey, I like worry a little bit. Like, is he going to be like a J.D. McKissick, like legit, like third down back, Nyheim Hines kind of thing? And it doesn't seem like teams are really using that back so much anymore. Yeah, so is what makes me nervous about Harvey, is that he's kind of like an older style of running back that like 6 years ago would have been kind of awesome to have, but like we're not seeing that as much. And as teams are kind of like, I don't know, they seem like you're kind of you pass to your running back, but that like third down back who you're working really hard to get involved as a receiver, like a James White or something. There's just way fewer of those guys now.
Yeah, there's a just like all these guys. So I probably didn't even need to say it, but there's a really low floor. Like he I don't even want to say they're flaws. He hasn't shown the full range of everything you need to do to play running back. And like you said, I think he probably developed some bad habits at UCF because they just said, brother, please, carry us. And so he bounces shit and he tries to hit home runs. And we keep mentioning Ken Walker, but I mean, this is another one where it's
Ken Walker does that too. Yeah,
they very dynamic, but doesn't kind of do necessarily what the play is designed to do. Also comes from he's at UCF. Josh Heupel's no longer at UCF, but Gus Malzahn, who used to be the Auburn coach, runs kind of the same gimmicky bullshit spread offense. And I don't think they also don't ask him necessarily to do a lot of right. Heupel does ask Sampson, like their run game is between the it's all between the tackles. They don't really run, hyperbole, but they don't really run a lot of, because they spread you out horizontally with their pass game and their wide receivers. So the run game is all between the tackles because everybody else is not there, right? UCF is doing something very, very, very similar, right? It's a total 4 wide receiver spread attack, and they just needed RJ Harvey to make shit happen in order to move the football. So that's both good and bad, right? You develop bad habits in that way, like Ken Walker did, but also like you got to be pretty goddamn good to still make shit happen, like Ken Walker is pretty good to hit those home runs in bad situations. And so I don't know. I think the talent is for sure there. Does it end up translating? I have no idea, because he's got a lot of work to do to get there.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about floor, we do have, I believe, at least some draft capital floor with him, because he's going to test really well, and he's really productive and a good college player. So, and he can catch passes, and he's not like tiny. He's probably he's listed above 200. So I mean, he's even if he's like 199, I think he'll be
I think he'll be like 205 at the combine or something.
That's great. That's great for his speed, and kind of the versatility of it. So I don't think he falls to round 6. I would be pretty surprised. He's one of the guys I don't think is like a UDFA potential guy, which makes me like him more. But then you worry about the ceiling more. Like, is he like a clear cut 80% snaps? Like this dude just took over a backfield by the end of the season. That would really, really surprise me.
Yeah.
Whereas like Ollie Gordon, if you told me like actually he tested kind of well at the combine and maybe not 80, but like 70% of snaps, because he can't pass block apparently. But he's just like he's what James Conner was last year, as far as like the role.
Or Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, like Tyrone Tracy, but I mean, very different type of player. But he's just
but I mean, just like the rookie that comes in and kind of takes over. But obviously, Devin Singletary is still playing. Whatever, these other guys are still getting to play, because he's not right. Tyrone Tracy was a converted wide receiver to running back, so he has some small little flaws that you can't just let him rip every single snap. That's how I feel about.
But Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez, like these dudes, you could just see. You're like, but if Ollie Gordon was a UDFA, because he like runs super slow, and they're like, I don't know what happened to this guy, but he's not good anymore.
He might run slow.
I think he might run really slow.
I know.
When you talk about like potential 4.7 plus guys, he's in that mix, man. It does not.
He's kind of big and doofy as a runner. Like he's bizarre, dude. He's like tall and long, but like he's big, but it's not like
he's huge. He's 30.
Yeah, but it's not like, I don't know, it doesn't look, like Brandon Jacobs was big. You were like, Jesus Christ, this dude's just Ollie looks kind of like a little lankier. And I mean, of course, he's very tall. So I have some serious reservations about Ollie Gordon, and I promise I'm not just latching on to the Senior Bowl pass protection, although that does matter to me. The huge breakout season was certainly impressive, but if you really need, so like Chuba and Ollie Gordon has always been hurt, so I don't want to totally contradict myself. Chuba was hurt his senior year, so to make the comp of the two, because they happened to go to the same school, and the same thing happened to them. Chuba breaks out, and you're like, he's the best running back in the country.
Ollie was like in the Ollie Gordon in like the college football drafts and stuff was going
101, 102.
Yeah. First couple picks. So he's 102 in the one that I did with Froton, but I think that was very, very classic of where he was going. So I mean, it is actually kind of crazy how far he's fallen from being like the 101 or 102 in these drafts.
It's very Luther Burden. He's like Luther Burden of wide receiver. So I know Luther Burden isn't falling as much, but running back first wide receiver is a very different thing. But Luther Burden was a top 5 pick in those college football drafts as well. Disappointed so ridiculously disappointed. And same thing with Ollie Gordon. But I have some very serious. So we just talked about RJ Harvey. It's a pretty good segue to Ollie, because both in bad situations this year, right? Both had good years the prior year, both in bad situations this year. One guy fell off the absolute face of the fucking earth, and the other guy was still amazing. And Ollie was in an even better situation. The team stunk, but that wasn't only because of the Oklahoma State offense had a better infrastructure this year than UCF did. And RJ Harvey just kept on doing what RJ Harvey does, right? And Ollie Gordon was like horrible. This wasn't just like he dropped off. This was like he was objectively bad for a college football running back. And so I already had some small concerns. It's kind of a little biased, just like the Judkins thing. I had some small concerns about Judkins being kind of a Lane Kiffin Ole Miss merchant, right? And then Ollie Gordon being a Big 12 Oklahoma State merchant. And then like, well, look what happens when Oklahoma State isn't quite as good. The guy is terrible. He needs to be the every down back, right? He needs to come in and be like, no, junior year is me, and I'm the full 3 down thing, because that's his he caught a lot of passes. You know, he played every snap at Oklahoma State. He needs to do that, and I just have very real concerns that that's who he is. I think this year isn't fully him, but also I don't think junior year is fully him. I think there's something in the middle, which is just like a totally mid-ass running back prospect for me.
Yeah, I definitely like watching him, and I said he looked high-waisted, like little like Latavius Murray.
He's got no torso.
It doesn't. It was like he doesn't really look like an NFL runner in terms of style. No real moves. Kind of runs like a wide receiver or something. Was not impressed. That's my little scouting note on Ollie Gordon. I mean, so okay, looking at the best ball ADPs and stuff, because of that previous pedigree from where he was going or what he was expected to do this year, he's got an ADP of 159. I think that's down a bit from where it started. Looking at where we're at leg up compared to market, Cam Skattebo we're now even with. That's the only guy that we've talked about that we're not ahead of ADP on. So, and Skattebo I've taken a decent amount of. I don't mind. He just
rose a lot. I'm a little.
Yeah, he rose a lot.
But I'm 3 picks ahead on Skattebo. I'm 13 picks behind on Ollie.
Yeah, and Ollie Gordon's the only guy that we've talked about, and one of the few guys in the pool of the rookie running backs that is like a fade. We have a fade position on. We have him at 183 with an ADP of 159. And with 183, yeah. Okay. The thing, like, I don't know what this dude's gonna run. Like, he might run. I would be surprised if he was in the 4.5s.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, so now I'm like 4.6s or slower, and like I said, I mean 4.7 is a problem. Like if a dude's in the 4.7s, it's like, man, you really better be catching passes, and you better probably run a good 4.6 time at your pro day too.
And to that end, I promise I don't mean to keep harping on the pass protection thing, but it's the Kerrane thing. Is like, so if you're gonna be slow, you better. We've talked about this a lot, right? Like there are many different traits, and most guys don't have all of them, right? There's only one Ashton Jeanty. So you can still be valuable, just like Kyren Williams is, despite being slow, because he's a good short, in between the tackles, short yardage runner. He pass protects and he can catch the ball. Now he hasn't been a particularly efficient pass catcher in the NFL, but I don't think that's just, but the team trusts him. He's a good receiver. I'm concerned that Ollie can do really any of those things, and he's probably slow. And that's where it gets like, I'm not saying he can't, but he's not a great short yardage runner. He's not a great receiver. He will catch the ball. I think he can catch, but he's not a particularly great receiver. And I don't think he can pass protect. So what does he really do?
Yeah. What would you say you do here?
Yeah.
Right? Because, 0.82 yards per hour and ran a bunch of routes, so not a zero there. He did have a good breakaway percentage. And so I think the place where maybe I strongly reconsider this opinion, and I reserve the right to reconsider this, if he tests well at the combine, I will change my fucking tune. Right? I really will. Like now we're talking about a 230 plus back who just tested well. He's got an elite season of production under his belt, and that testing well will presumably change, the draft capital conversation from one was like this dude's kind of continually falling to he'll be a 3rd round pick at worst, or 4th round pick at worst, but likely a 3rd round pick, and that changes the discussion where it takes away some of these like really awful floor outcomes completely out of the mix, and now at 155 or whatever, he's like a target. Like I would flip and go like a lot of the stuff I said about Sampson, right, and Devin Neal of like about how this guy could be a week 1 starter and all that. Like if he's in the 4.5s, jumps well, and teams are like, yeah, this guy could go 3rd round for sure. I mean, yeah, I will completely change. But it's right as we sit here right now, I'm like, I don't know that this guy's very fast. And he's coming off this horrible season that no one can seem to really explain. And like, is he a 6th round pick? So I like, okay, you're on the clock and you have 4 running backs and you're deciding in the big board for your RB5 between RJ Harvey and Ollie Gordon. Who are you taking?
Harvey.
We have him 1 pick ahead. We have Harvey 1 pick ahead.
What's Ollie's? He goes like 159. So,
and Harvey goes 205. But we have we have Harvey. We still have Harvey 1 pick ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple other running backs ahead of Ollie Gordon that we haven't even got to yet that we can own. But that's. I know this is a rookie podcast, but if we're talking big board, we're also talking a range of, Jalen Wright, who I just mentioned, who's probably the backup to Achane in Miami, Tyler Algier, who is the backup to Bijan Robinson. It's like, I know what I'm getting.
I know what you're getting. Yeah.
I know what I'm getting, maybe not totally talent wise with Jalen Wright, but like, I know generally what I'm getting. And what are the odds that Ollie Gordon's better than Jalen Wright? They can't be that much. They can't be that great. And I have all this uncertainty around him, right? Ray Davis, Ty Johnson is a free agent for the Bills, right? Like, am I really going to take Ollie Gordon over Ray Davis? It's all, I haven't clicked him. I don't plan on clicking him. Like you said, I reserve the right also to change if he comes out and runs 4.5 and jumps well.
Isn't it funny that we have to specify we're reserving the right to change our opinions on these players in February, later in February?
The Super Bowl was yesterday.
It's so dumb. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna keep changing my minds here throughout February.
It's closer to Christmas than the football season.
So stupid.
not allowed to change our opinions. Like, I mean, like there's so many guys, right? Like my highest owned running back is Will Shipley. Like I can get Will Shipley at pick 200. Why do I need to take Ollie Gordon at pick 160? It's just I'm not trying to make it a shit on Ollie Gordon thing, but I just think
it's just he's not in the tier above at all. It's like him and Harvey and like all these other dudes are in a tier, and I would say he's in the tier, like maybe he's in a tier with Harvey, or there's another guy I'm kind of curious to get your opinion on, DJ Giddens, who kind of pops well for me, and seems like he'll be drafted decently high. So I would kind of throw him out maybe as being in that tier as well. But his draft capital is a little. I mean, it's definitely shakier. He's 172.
But all these guys are
mock draft database. Yeah,
it's really shaky for all these guys, especially in February. Again, in February, we'll know after the combine a lot better about what the projected draft capital is for all these guys. Even using the data that's available to us right now is still very flimsy. Yeah.
So I mean, you could argue that Harvey and Gordon are kind of in their own tier, as like they'll be drafted. I mean,
they're not going to go undrafted.
They're not going to go undrafted. Yeah. Where Giddens kind of pops for me, but I don't know really like what the draft capital is going to come in at. And he pops a bit as a pass catcher is one of the reasons why, but he definitely does have some holes. The breakaway percentage isn't great. Not sure how he's going to test. And then Damian Martinez kind of kicks off the next tier, but that tier is tight. Like I've got like Damian Martinez, Brashard Smith, LeQuint Allen, Trevor Etienne, Kalel Mullings, Raheem Sanders as like a giant clump of guys. And completely fading Woody Marks, who has an ADP of 198.
That was a fucking psyop by Hayden because he went.
Yeah, Woody did he go to school? I don't remember.
Woody went to fucking USC and Hayden dropped him in like the 130 ADP. Like I'm like, brother, he may not get drafted. Why the fuck is he going at pick 130?
Third down back.
He's like a fun college. He was like a fun college
he's
player.
Fast, but dude, you breathe on that guy and he falls over.
You said earlier, rough. JD McKissick, like the second coming of Nyheim Hines is fucking Woody Marks. Like, he literally was that at RIP Mike Leach. He played for Mike Leach at oh my god, what's it called? Anyway, but like he comes from the air raid. Like that's his best skill set. It's just like catching passes, which is totally useless. DJ Giddens. It's another. He's tricky because I think it's one of those weird intersections of kind of good at football, but a little juiceless. Like I'm really worried about the lack of juice from DJ Giddens, but he also has, like you said, the pass catching pops. He is very much a well-rounded football player. He's got size. He's
212.
So when you're efficient as a runner, I think he's a reasonable, like certainly not Devin Neal, but like more in that style. But like more that style of a runner. He's not a big juice guy, but puts the foot in the ground, right? Gets yards. And then when you combine that with pass catching and pass protection, I'm into that. There's other guys I think with just like a lot more juice than DJ Giddens has.
That's fair. Very productive in a couple years.
Mullings. I like Mullings more than DJ Giddens.
Oh, you do? Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's a non-derogatory. That's fair on Kalel Mullings. I think part of it with Giddens is his ADP his ADP is around 200, 201, and all these other guys are like 240. So I've been taking Giddens more because it's like if you want Giddens, you take him there, and I like mixing him in.
Get another guy.
You can get another guy later.
See,
like
I just have him in the last round. Yeah, I just have Giddens in the last round mix in terms of rankings, and he goes a little bit earlier.
He goes a little earlier, and I'm just kind of like, okay, fine. Like, let's do it. I don't mind. Because I honestly think all of these guys should go around pick 200.
Agreed.
So the fact that Giddens does is like totally cool. And maybe even earlier than that. Maybe
there's
more
like 15 of these guys.
190. Yeah.
There's like 15 of these guys. They all should be somewhere in that 200 pick.
Well, how deep? So the guys I mentioned are the ones that I'm most interested in taking. Okay. And I've added, so just again, it's Giddens, Damian Martinez, Brashard Smith, LeQuint Allen, Trevor Etienne, Kalel Mullings, and Raheem Sanders are the kind of the guys I'm most interested in. To be completely honest with you, I don't really take Raheem Sanders very much because I just take Kalel Mullings or LeQuint Allen or Brashard Smith, one of which is almost always there.
Agreed.
But then there's like Woody Marks I'm not taking. I'm not really taking Bhayshul Tuten or Kyle Monungai or Donovan Edwards or Jarquez Hunter or Marcus Yarns or Jordan James or Phil Maffa or
Tahj I like Brooks. Jordan James.
Oh, you do? Okay. So talk to me about him.
I like Jordan James. Another kind of I just want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. Kind of reminds me of a shitty version, okay? A shitty version of Dylan Sampson where like pops early and he was so I'm holding on to priors here, okay? And given the context, I will fully wave the white flag if this misses. Part of the reason why I was not a huge Bucky stan was because Bucky was in a full-blown 50-50 split with Jordan James at Oregon. And Jordan James, here's what Jordan James did. Now, this past season, so all right, I'm getting out over my skis. I'm clearly tilting about Bucky still because I was not a huge Bucky guy. Early declare, right? So Jordan James only played 3 seasons. at Oregon. Got to play as a freshman, not like a lot, but got to play as a freshman. As a sophomore, so Bucky transferred in. Bucky transfers in. Jordan James and Bucky shared the backfield at Oregon. 107 carries for 759 yards, 7.1 yards per carry for Jordan James. That was the Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, Bucky, right? Pretty good offense. So, okay. So the offense helps the efficiency, but catches passes as well. How much of that was Bo Nix check down king, right? I don't know.
Well, dude, he wasn't a check down king this year. What I mean, he likes kind of some of the design short stuff, but I mean, he kind of scrambles.
He didn't really throw to we thought that he was going to throw to the
Denver. What about my Jaleel McLaughlin bags if he's such a check down king?
Javonte had the one game with like 1 million catches, and every other game that he never threw to any of the running backs. It was chaos, but efficient as a receiver, as a true sophomore in at Oregon, and then takes over the backfield this year and was like not quite as good, but Oregon, I know I was talking them up as like number 1 in the country. They just weren't quite as good. I'm not a Dylan Gabriel guy, so I think he kind of held them back a little bit, but still 5 yards per carry, almost 1,300 yards, catches another 26 balls. I think he's this really well-rounded, and I'm holding on to, for sure, 100% still holding on to the 2023 season where it was like, look how good Bucky is. This dude kept Bucky off the field and was hyper efficient. 7 yards per carry, brother. 100 carries for 700 yards. That's cool. Nuts. So he touched the ball 100 and call it 120 times, and damn near had 1,000 yards at Oregon. Like he kept, like I said, we know Bucky's awesome. I'm not saying this is great process, but I like to do that. Be like, wow, okay, so now I know this dude in the NFL is a baller, and this dude was like holding this guy back, or whatever, something like that. And so Jordan James, and then early declare, still good as a junior this year at Oregon, well-rounded, pass protection, pass catcher, all of that kind of stuff. I like him a little bit more than these other guys because he kind of has, like, if somebody walked in, now he's not going to have a job day 1, of course, but if somebody walked in to like, the Raiders drafted me in the 5th round and they signed some shitty veteran free agent, like in week 12, is Jordan James getting 80% of the snaps? I don't know. He definitely could. As much as I love Kalel Mullings, I'm not sure that Kalel Mullings could do that. Brashard Smith can't do that, right? So I'm pretty into Jordan James amongst this last tier, right? He's fully in the last tier, but I like him in this last tier.
So this is going to seem derogatory, but it's really not. Because of the price. It is derogatory from a player outlook perspective, but because of the price,
I said with all due respect.
Yeah, he is a little TJ Yeldon-y. Looking at my stuff, where where the spot where he, like, the big red flag is that you talk about breakaway percentage. He has the lowest breakaway percentage of anyone I've got in here, 23%.
So this year, the breakaway stuff, like, he was efficient, like generally efficient, but it was like 1,000,000 8-yard runs,
chunk runs.
It was really frustrating.
So
I'm concerned about that too.
Yeldon, same deal. But Yeldon was like a solid pass catcher, and Jordan James was a solid pass catcher as well. But yeah, I mean, when you have this, Alexander Madison also had a 26% breakaway percentage, which is, you don't necessarily want to got to be Alexander Madison, but if he's in the last round, and ends up, as kind of a solid number 2 who then works his way into work. Like that, I think it's like he's versatile enough to kind of get on the field in a couple different ways.
Right.
I like mixing him in.
About 210, comes from a Oregon number 1 team in the country. Like, we're doing the Judkins, like the floor of Judkins. Like, I think Jordan James will get drafted. If Jordan James went to San Diego State, he would not get drafted. But I think there's enough intrigue for me. And like I said, I'm definitely holding on to a little bit, which is probably not fair because of the slander I was giving Ollie Gordon, but he didn't fall off to quite the extent that Ollie Gordon did, to where I'm still looking at kind of the combination of sophomore, junior year and early declare that is like, if there's something in between the crazy efficiency that he was as a sophomore and the little bit worse junior year, like if there's something in between there, given the full like well-rounded profile, like in terms of pass catching and all that kind of stuff, like I think there's something interesting there.
Top comp Brian Robinson for me.
That's a pretty good comp.
Yeah. So that, I mean, there would be your kind of bull case. You know, it's not exciting, but that in the 20th round, you get Brian Robinson production as a rookie. Shit. That's good. That's really good. All right, I'm glad you mentioned him because I wasn't really drafting him, but I'll start mixing him in.
What about let me toss a couple. What you mentioned? Do you have anything on Kalel Mullings? I just think Kalel Mullings is awesome.
He looks awesome. Honestly, it's I'm not like a big film guy, but when you watch Kalel Mullings run, I'm like, that's an NFL running back. I know what an NFL running back looks like, and that dude is an NFL running back. He's got size. He gets downhill immediately. He's fast enough. He's not getting caught from behind. Like he's I think he's in the 4.5s. He could be 4.4s. He could be like, you know, maybe he's like
the over under is like 4.51 or something like that. Probably.
Yeah, that feels right to me. It happens quickly. Like he gets up to speed quickly, but he's big. Just like a very much kind of Tyler Algier. And this is my type. I like the converted linebackers. Yeah, I'm into it. I think it's cool. And you know, he's physical, but he just seems like he's not messing around. Like he's gonna be good around the goal line. He's gonna, like, you're supposed to, like, you know, go run up into this hole. Like he's running up into that hole and he's doing it quickly. Maybe he should like wait even a little further to let his blocks get set up. Nope, I'm running, baby. I'm downhill immediately.
He's Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, it's Marshawn Lynch. Yeah,
he's gonna run through a motherfucker's face. That's what he does.
Right. So I think that has, you know, utility at the NFL level. I think an NFL coach is like, hey, here's a big guy who gets downhill and like he hits the right hole as fast as he possibly can, and he's got a few moves. Like he can spin off contact. You know, but he one cut runner. It in kind of like the ultimate, like, you know, dream case is Jordan Howard, right? You know, like you're like that kind of back where you're just like, oh man, like you're just you got the size, you get downhill, and you produce right away because there's an opportunity in front of you. He doesn't really pop for me because he didn't really play. But I don't know. I mean, kind of a little bit of finger on the scale thing for me with him, or just, you know, the IKB of like, I know what a downhill running back looks like, and this guy is built like one and looks like one, and was doing it at Michigan. You know, it's not like some small school dude. He's at Michigan. So he's better than Donovan Edwards, he was sharing the backfield with, who's like more of a true, you know, he didn't convert from linebacker.
Edwards fucking cookies, bro. Like Donovan Edwards is on the cover of NCAA football and got fucking embarrassed by Kalel Mullings. He took the backfield from him.
And I don't think Kalel Mullings will get drafted high, but I think he could easily go 5th round, maybe 4th round. You're looking for like this year's Dameon Pierce. You know, from a couple years back, where you're like, they just fed him. Like he was a really good early down guy, consistently churning out chunk gains, and he just got fed from the jump. Like, and ends up being like a 7th, 8th round pick by the end of August, because
and then we fade him in 2026,
and then we fade the shit out of him. Yeah, but let's get some now.
The 20th round rookie season Dameon Pierce sounds awesome. Pay the premium for 7th round second year Dameon Pierce sounds fucking terrible.
Sounds terrible.
But, I will just add, Mullings is another one of those, like, he didn't really get much run. So his second to last season, Michigan won the national championship, right? That was Blake Corum and JJ McCarthy and Roman Wilson, and obviously Loveland was there. All those guys, awesome football team. And people kind of you have to ask your buddy that you're doing a show with what he thought about this, because the people in the know never really thought Donovan Edwards was very good.
He does not like Donovan Edwards. Eric Froton. He's not. He's like, this dude sucks. I'll let him. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he did not seem. Maybe that's too harsh, but he did not seem impressed with Edwards. No.
Well, it's definitely not too harsh, if I may say so myself. Donovan Edwards fucking sucks. But Mullings, like in the tiny little micro samples, like Edwards was terrible. Corum was okay. And it was like, why the hell do they keep forcing this Donovan Edwards thing? Like, it had to be, there had to be some politics that were involved with it. And then the season started, right? Donovan Corum's gone, Edwards is back. It's like, well, at least Mullings going to be the 1B. And there's like, everybody who told you Donovan Edwards stinks and Kalel Mullings should have been playing for multiple seasons now, he proved it, right? He came out and he just stole the shit from Donovan Edwards. And they, like, speaking of building the plane out of somebody, their offense was so bad. They beat Ohio State. They beat Ohio State, the national champion, because they finally just said, the offense is you, brother. 32, 35 carries or whatever it was. I don't have it pulled up, but like they just said, we're just going to run you, play defense and run the shit out of Mullings because we can't do anything else. And so, like, again, that has value to me. Like, he comes from this shit situation and he produced and he took it over with his play. Yeah. And so I think he's good. Like, I think probably like 5th round pick or something. And so it's probably not a big deal. But in terms of these guys, he's one of the higher up the list for me.
But like, think about like, what if the Bears take him in the 5th round? It's like, oh my God.
If he's their Demont, their Demont and somebody else is oh my God, he's going to smash. He's going to score 15 touchdowns.
There's so many landing spots where you're like, a downhill runner. Like, if he's good and he's like, he could be someone we're super excited about by the end of the summer, and he's completely free. The only problem is that there's like a bunch of these guys. So it's like,
I know
Damian Martinez could be, Damian Martinez is like 230 something and pretty fluid, and very much just a 2-down guy. He's not going to, but he's massive and might test well. That could get him a job.
So there's like a transfer, by the way.
Where did he start?
I think Oregon State.
Okay.
I think no, I shouldn't say that. If someone's going to go get the bag, go get your money.
You do.
So I have no and go to try to win a national championship. I get it. This past year was rough for him, relative to expectation and relative to what he was doing at Oregon State. Again, Oregon State is a disastrous football program, right? And he was crushing at Oregon State, goes to Miami, and it's like, oh man, they got Damian Martinez. You're like, Cam Moore, Damian Martinez on this offense now. This is going to be crazy. And he is a fucking afterthought. Like, it was almost like he wasn't even a part of of this offense. It was Cam Ward's team, and Damian Martinez happened to get a few carries. It was a rough season. So I think he'll test okay for the size, right? Like a Raz type stuff. Like, I think he's going to look all right for the size and stuff, but not a pass catcher. Really not very good in his final college season. Like, again, comparing him to Mullings, I prefer Mullings to Damian Martinez probably by a good bit, actually.
Okay. All right. I'm actually trying to like not get too excited about Mullings, because I think Mullings
would you have some fun
awesome.
For fucking once?
Fine. All right, fuck it. I'm raising. Because look, man, I mean, this guy might be UDFA. Like, that's bad.
It's not the first time I've ever got excited about a UDFA. Okay, they had like 40% Cody Schrader in the big board last year, but these running backs are better than.
Right, I'm raising Kalel Mullings up. He's dude. Good. He is really fun. And one thing I have kind of like, so I think that running back is a position in terms of the prospect stuff where people underrate the talent. That people like, they don't factor in, like, it's like, oh, it's all situation. And it's like, situation plays such a big role that, that's true. But, it's true that situation really matters. But then it gets overstated where people are basically like, who cares? Like, he's going to get all the work. And this is why I bet against Najee every year of his career. Because it's like, he's going to get a lot of work, but less than you would think given what they invested. Like, a UDFA literally forced a split with him. Like, that's basically never happens to a first round pick. Does that concern you at all in terms of how talented he is? So it's just like the talent sometimes gets thrown out completely depending on, how much draft capital these guys get and where they land. And I think that's like a big edge that you factor in. Like, let's look at how these guys did and how good they are. And, you see guys like Bucky takes over backfield because he's awesome, not because really any, a weak starter ahead of him, but
but nobody got hurt. No one got hurt.
He just took it over.
Rachaad White is still a good pass catcher and still a good pass protector. They finally just said, like, we can't do this anymore. He's too good.
Yeah. So I think that there's, I hunt for these guys and I look for these profiles that really pop. At the same time, I do think that there's value in kind of like throwing out all of it at a certain point and just like looking for dudes who have like a trait, like a thing that like, and so last year, like Tyrone Tracy rated like shit for me. Did you ever hear me say anything bad about Tyrone Tracy? I was always in. He's a converted wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He lands in a good spot. He was, probably played it. I don't remember if I ever drafted him big board because I'm like, where is he going to get drafted? But the second that a team had some capital behind him,
right.
I'm like, yeah, great. Pacheco, I was too bearish on. One of the kind of this is a spot that helped me like learn this lesson of like, hey man, if a guy runs 4.3 and he ends up on the Chiefs, throw out all the other stuff, because it is, it is running back where like situation is massive and opportunity is massive. And so like if a guy can do a thing and he is given a situation, then that can be quite valuable. And Mullings, I'm pretty confident can do a thing. The reason I like Martinez is because I think he can also do a thing, which is run downhill and be huge. I like Brashard Smith because he's another converted wide receiver who teams seem to be pretty in. Another Senior Bowl guy. Teams are really impressed with him as like a running back at the Senior Bowl, thinking maybe he's like a gadgety guy, and it's like, no, this dude's like a real running back. LaQuint Allen, another undersized guy, but has, I think McShay has him in his top 100 now. So we could see some draft capital for him. Pass catching looks pretty decent there. So those guys are kind of, that's why like that is the group that I've really been drafting past like the DJ Giddens or I guess you're kind of including DJ Giddens is like
in that bucket.
Yeah, in that bucket. Yeah.
I think that is completely spot on. I have no notes. Brashard Smith, good at the game. Will it work out in the NFL? I really have no idea. But to your point, has a skill. And I think that's what's really special about this running back class is the Royal probably overhypes it a little bit because beyond Jeanty, it's very good. But everybody has a lot of flaws. Like Bijan and Gibbs in and of themselves probably made that class better than this one, as good as Jeanty is, because there was two of those dudes and there's only one of those dudes in this class. And I love, we've talked about all of them, but what we do have is like 25 dudes that can do a thing, at least a thing. And so that's what makes it fun, is because like yes, Brashard Smith's 185 pounds or whatever, a converted wide receiver, but he's a special football player. Like, will that matter? I honestly have no idea, and I would bet no. Right? The probability says no.
I also have him as 195, which I think might be a Senior Bowl weight. So he's not.
Was it?
He's not as. Yeah,
I need to update. I need to update my stuff with all this. I haven't gone through all this.
Which is a meaningful difference. Like if you're in the
100%, Kyron's 195. He's. What I will say, if you look at Brashard Smith and you look at Kyren Williams, they are very different body types. So even if they're both 195, Kyren Williams is built like a little
195 at the Senior Bowl.
Wow. He had to put weight on. He had to.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. Yeah.
He had to,
but he looked good. Like he impressed people there. So,
but he's got juice. Brashard Smith has some juice, and he's an awesome receiver, as you would expect, because he played wide receiver, and SMU recruited and play running back. But so anyway, all of these guys have like something that they bring to the table, and I think that's what makes it very fun. Who was it that one more guy I just wanted to bring up that has a thing that they do, and it's Kyle Monungai, which is funny that we talked about. We talked about Isaiah Pacheco because
he's kind of got the try hard Skattebo.
He feels very like he's not going to run 4.3 like Isaiah Pacheco did, but he feels very like, how the fuck does this dude keep producing at Rutgers? You're like, now before this year, they were really bad this year, but before this year, he was on some of the better Rutgers teams, but like, was it him? Like, he was the offense. So like, was he a big reason why this was better Rutgers teams? I believe he was still the starting running back when Bo Melton was there at Rutgers. So like he's been on like I said, a couple of the better Rutgers teams, but like they could not do anything if it wasn't Monangai running the ball this season, and to still produce and to still be at least reasonably efficient. I think he has a skill, and it is a between the tackles runner. That's pretty goddamn good. You know, those are not that hard to find, but like, would I be completely and utterly shocked if Kyle Monangai goes in the 6th round and somebody gets hurt, and the next thing you know, you're like, shit, that dude just had 18 carries for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Would I be shocked? No, I wouldn't, because I think he's just a real life good in between the tackles runner.
Would you put Tahj Brooks in that category of good college back that maybe it doesn't translate to NFL level? But...
I think he has a lot less juice than Monangai does.
Okay,
Tahj Brooks, but Tahj just for multiple seasons just took a backfield and they said, no one else is stepping foot on this football field. You are doing absolutely everything, catching passes, getting all the goal line work. And so I don't think he's particularly special, but goddamn, man, it's also hard to deny like 2 seasons of an entire backfield being you and you producing. Like he was
at 230 productive. Is what I have him listed
at. Tank.
So.
He's huge. And
I haven't really drafted him because
and protects and is a pass protector.
He feels like a UDFA to me, but I don't, I does not look fast to me at all. And I've seen other people say, it's probably not an NFL athlete, but he's like kind of worth keeping your eye on, especially like if he tested better than expected at the combine, I that would change things.
I think he runs for in that we're talking about the death 4.7 sentence. I think he's in that bucket. But like if he somehow runs 4.56 or something, I would be like, okay, we got to change the ranks here because this is shocking. So he's one to monitor. The other one that you mentioned was LeQuint Allen. That kind of falls in the Tahj Brooks category of I don't think he's a very good athlete, and I don't think LeQuint's a very good runner. But what LeQuint does is he has 2 skills. He's a very good receiver, and he's he's probably the best pass protector in this class.
Okay.
So like those are, but right. I don't want to compare him to Kyron, but in terms of having that skill, that's what Kyron did, right? Was like, protect the passer, catch the ball in college. Now, Kyron was a significantly better runner than LeQuint was, but like, again, like you mentioned earlier, like he's been a riser, and people seem to be hyping him up a little bit. I was not that big into him, but I'm moving LeQuint up in a little bit, like as we speak, because I think the steam is kind of real, and I think he has those 2 skill sets, man. Like that's Rachaad White, which doesn't sound fun.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound super fun. But like
it was kind of fun for a second.
A lot of fantasy points. He scored a lot of fantasy points. If you got last round Rachaad White, you would be pretty excited.
Yeah, for sure. LeQuint is a guy that I moved up recently just because, I think he can do a couple things that matter, and the draft capital looks like it could be pretty solid. Like he could be a round 4 player.
I thought he was going to be undrafted when the whole process started. So he declared late, which I didn't even have him in my early rankings. And then I just thought like, I'm not even going to put him in there because he's not even going to get drafted. And then everything since then has been like, no, dumb. You need to do something with this dude.
That's where I was at too. I wasn't really even thinking about him early. But yeah, he's kind of starting to make a little noise as far as like, this guy is in the mix. He should be someone we're thinking about in the 20th round at least.
Yep.
I want to ask you quickly about some of these other guys who like they kind of like look okay, but I don't know where the draft capital is. Trevor Etienne is one of them who seemed like he had an okay Senior Bowl. He banged up at Georgia, doesn't really do anything. Transferred there, doesn't do much. Bhayshul Tuten, a guy. Gretch asked me who the best running back name was in the class. I gave him Bhayshul Tuten.
I mean, Cam Skattebo, but
Cam Skattebo is pretty good. But but Bhayshul Tuten also pretty good.
Agreed.
The Raheem Sanders I mentioned, he's another one of these big backs, 229 pounds. broke some tackles, okay breakaway stuff, 1.16 yards per route run is fine, ran a lot of routes. It's like, what if he's drafted in, in the 4th round? Like, that would be fine. He could earn a role for sure. Also doesn't really like pop in a big way. And then another guy who like does not pop for me at all, but like I know the name and was like assuming as I researched the class would be someone I needed to know is Phil Maffa. So any thoughts on those guys?
So I just want to start with Maffa super quickly because I feel very vindicated about Phil Maffa because I thought he was a plotter like last year. And so this is to my bank account's detriment. Okay. For a year and a half in DFS, I kept saying like, no, all you ass clowns that keep playing Phil Maffa in DFS, like you don't get it. He's not very good. Like blah, 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 blah. And he just kept dunking on me, just absolutely dunking on me. But then as time wore on, and as the Clemson season, especially this year, wore on, Maffa was quite bad. And I think out of everyone we talked about here today, like including Tahj Brooks, I don't think Maffa has NFL juice like at all. Fine college player, but it was just kind of like Shipley. So he played alongside Shipley, and Shipley was frequently banged up, and Maffa does have like a full skill set in terms of like he plays on passing downs and all that because he's fucking huge and can catch the ball. But I just think like, yeah, like really everybody that he's probably in that Tahj Brooks category, but he didn't even like, consolidate and really dominate like Tahj Brooks did. So like we're talking about after Tahj Brooks as a prospect is kind of rough. Tuten is like it's semi intriguing, I guess, that I would say, but Tuten is the one where I think if I only had like a data backed process, I would be like, this is intriguing.
You're right. Yeah.
This is pretty intriguing.
He pops in the like, I should look into this guy.
Kind of efficient, catches the ball. Yeah. So I think not the worst. Like I would not be shocked, right? If
big backfield dominator rating guy, 94% is a peak and 81% overall, or sorry,
last
for his
2
career.
Years, right? Yeah. The last 2 years just totally dominated the backfield, I think.
He must have, because 81% is the highest in the class. So he transferred to Virginia Tech, 81% and 94% dominator ratings for 81, because he was at 75% of the backfield at North Carolina A&T.
Yeah, I was trying to remember where he came from, because he came from a small school, goes to Virginia Tech. Probably my favorite amongst this group is him, but don't watch it, because like I said, it's like the production is like kind of there, but it's very uninspiring. We talked about a lot of guys. We talked about a lot of guys who were like, watch that dude play, because that's special. You watch two, and you're just like, how did he have 2,000 yards? It's like that's over 2 years, of course, but it's I don't know. He's kind of a difficult eval, because I think, like I said, if you just look straight data backed, I think it's reasonable, but that's where I like to, like I said, my process is very flawed, and I take a lot of different things in, but I do watch a lot of these guys, and he's one of those where you're just like, this is not a special, right? Like think about Brashard Smith, who doesn't have any of the dominator stuff, doesn't have any of the hot, like super duper high level production really until this year. And even then it wasn't that special. Turn on the Brashard Smith tape and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, like this dude is a baller. And you turn on Tuten and you're like, yeah, this looks like just your average 1,000-yard rusher in college football, like that we never hear from. Again, who was the other ones? I'm sorry.
Well, just real quick on Brashard Smith, he has 1.81 yards per route run on 13.6 routes per game. That's the highest yards per route run in the class. So he's the converted wide receiver, right, but like he can catch the ball and do something with it. So
real routes too. Real route. Yeah. He runs real route, as you would expect from a wide receiver. It's not just like, it's not Ollie Gordon check down and the corner can't tackle you. It's like real pass catching.
The other dude, ETN and Sanders are the other guys.
So ETN, we'll get that one out of the way. He stinks, in my opinion. As you mentioned, like there just like really isn't production there. Like a timeshare back at Florida goes. I cannot believe that he transferred to Georgia. Times must be tough in the old NIL world for Georgia. If ETN, Ohio State has Treveyon Henderson and they get Quinshon Judkins, and Georgia settles for the shitty ETN. I know he was banged up this year, but he really, there's no production, and if there's no production, I want to turn it on and I want to be like, okay, I know, I want to find the excuse for the lack of production. And if you just watch ETN, he can catch passes, I guess. So if we're going to really squint, he's more of a passing down back, which is something, but like,
yeah,
what do I win? What do I win with, again, like the 909 JD?
No, I was looking at the wrong guy. He's at I was looking at RJ Harvey for a second, his cell, and I was like, oh yeah, no, but he had 0.91 yards per route run.
It's not
on 12 routes.
I'm just saying his skill set is that of you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's his best, probably his best skill, which is probably bad considering he was inefficient at his best skill, skill. He was all right at Florida as a pass catcher. Raheem Sanders, fun fact, he goes by Rocket, which is awesome. He's the most fun. Yeah, he's the most fun of this. I think he's actually kind of interesting. You mentioned the pass catching injuries. He's dealt with some injuries and then he transferred away from Arkansas. And so I've like some, he's one of the weirder prospects in this, like kind of early breakout. I don't have it in front of me. I need to pull these guys up as you're mentioning them so I can make sure I'll
pull it up. Yeah.
Totally screwing it up.
Raheem Sanders had 1,400 yards in his second season.
True sophomore at Arkansas, 1,400 yards as a rusher, 6.5 yards per carry, caught 28 balls for almost 10 yards per catch. Like
12 total touchdowns.
After that season, everybody would have thought he left after his junior year to go to the league. Like he was one of there was no college football best ball back then, but he would have been for sure like second round pick, if not first round pick in that. Like he was one of the kind of more premier running backs at that time, and then comes back and is not healthy, played 6 games, right? Only got 62 carries, played 6 games in his junior season, and then leaves and goes to South Carolina. Did play 12 games this year, but the efficiency was fucking shit. And so my real, I think the skill set is a real NFL
316 passing or receiving yards.
I think the skill set is real because he can. He's big. He can catch the ball. There's a little bit of juice there. He's a really weird runner. Turn him on later when we get done. Watch. It's kind of Ollie Gordon-esque, like goofy kind of running style or whatever. But I think he has. I'm not sure there's a difference between him and Ollie Gordon, like skill set wise. Like if Rocket went to Oklahoma State, I think he could have had that Ollie season from 2 years ago. Type
Rocket
situation.
Sanders. I'm drafting Rocket Sanders. I'm sorry.
It's a fucking badass name, dude.
That's great.
It's an awesome name.
Sorry, Bhayshul, Tuten. You've been replaced as the name guy.
Imagine getting the nickname Rocket when you're 225 fucking pounds. Like you got to be a pretty awesome dude for that. So, I don't think he's anything special, but I have him ranked above all those other guys. That you mentioned. I have him ranked ahead of Tahj, Tuten, Giddens. So he's in the mix. I think he's in the mix for like actually draftable.
Okay, I'm have him. Do you like him or Damian Martinez better?
I like Rocket better than Damian Martinez. The pass catching is real, dude. Like, if Damian Martinez is just going to be an early down runner, and I'm not exactly sure how good he is at that, at least Rocket has the pass catching chops, and he's huge. So I think that there's a easier path to Sanders being a real NFL player. What does that look like? I have no idea. It could just be, current Samaj P. Ryan type stuff. Yeah. But current Samaj P. Ryan, if all hell breaks loose in a backfield, becomes 18 fantasy points per game Samaj P. Ryan, right? And like, so I'm always partial to the pass catchers when we get to this. When we get to this tier, the Rockets of the world always stand out to me over the Martinez.
Yep. No, that makes a ton of sense. And Martinez really doesn't have any pass catching juice, but Rocket does.
0.
They're like the same size.
Like none. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm glad we talked about him because he's been one of those guys where I'm like, in my stuff, it's like, this is a guy that you should like pay attention to, look into more. He actually rates slightly better than Damian Martinez, but I'm like, Martinez has seemed to be a little bit safer from the draft capital perspective. Mock draft database has him at 143. Sanders is at 183. So, you know, not that that's like a huge difference, but it's like, which one of these guys is like maybe a UDFA, be the 183 guy. So, but man, yeah, I need to draft a little bit more him. The other guy I want to mention before we get out of here, you know, I'm not going to be in a 3-hour running back podcast and not bring up Marcus Yarns from Delaware, my alma mater. This
aren't
dude
you supposed to? Aren't you? You got to give the Marcus Yarns. You fucking went to the school. You got to give the Marcus Yarns breakdown.
He's 190 pounds, but 71% career backfield dominator rating, which you love to see as like a small guy. 84% peak dominator rating, 1.59 yards per route run, breakaway percentage of 43%, which is pretty good. And so you're getting kind of the Brashard Smith type of player. But you know, he's like a little bit shakier of a bet, which is why I'm not currently drafting him. I'm just taking Brashard Smith because he's free. And why take arbitrage version of a free player? That's like unnecessary. but I do want to mention Yarns as a guy to keep your eye on. You know, at the combine, and maybe not as someone who's like going to blow up the combine or anything, but if he has a nice workout and teams start talking about him as, you know, a guy that they like as a pass catcher, at that point, I think he would become draftable.
I think so too. I think he's like, keep tabs.
Yeah, keep tabs
on Yarns is one of those guys. He reminds me of running back version of a guy who I liked. I think these kind of guys are intriguing. It's just so very hard to understand, like, exactly how good they are. What does the NFL think about them? So I always try to defer the Dylan Laubes, right, of the world to like wait for the NFL. Like, you know, this, we talked about this a million times when it's these big school guys or just Division I players, at least. I'm much more like we defer on this a lot, where I'm a little bit more willing to go against the draft capital or draft capital risk and just say like, nope, this is my guy. He's good. I don't give a shit what the NFL thinks. Right. When it's these kind of guys, like, how arrogant would I be to say, no, I know how good this Delaware running back is. Yeah, I know better than the NFL. So there's a line. We got to draw a line at some point. But I think, like,
honestly, it's because you haven't watched much Delaware. I think. I think we get Delaware on.
I didn't
on the
go
TV
there. I'm sure Pat's grinding every Delaware game, holding the baby, watching Delaware football at fucking 9 a.m. San Diego time or whatever on a Saturday morning. But I will say, I think he's like intriguing. I don't have him ranked or anything like that, but I'm going to see how the combine goes, and I'm going to see what shakes out with the NFL after that. And that's kind of how I treat those guys. Is that's how I'm playing it too. I'm not going to worry about them just yet.
I might start thinking about him post combine, but I think generally for people who didn't go to Delaware, you probably can wait until after the draft. But it would be, you know, I could see him going 5th, 6th round and then having like the type of summer where you're like, oh, this guy's like going to make the roster, and you know, he catches passes, so you know, you can start mixing him in as a last round pick.
What I was gonna before I, as I tend to do when I ramble, cut myself off. It reminds me of I kind of got into Ryan, what I thought was Flournoy, but it is Flanoy for the Dallas Cowboys, who went to, I did not go to this school, but it's not far down the road from me, SEMO, Southeast Missouri State, and was like really hyper productive at a D1 AA school, and goes to the Cowboys. And I was like on the lookout for a Cowboys, you know, a rookie Cowboys wide receiver, because it's Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert and these losers. Right. And he goes there. It was 7th round, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to put him in the back end of the rankings and take non-zero. of this guy, and that's how I think about the yarns types. Is like,
if
we can get the right spot, he's going to end up in the rankings, and I'll have non-zero. Is kind of my thought about someone like him.
Yeah, see, it's a deep running back class.
We're getting down to Delaware.
It's Marcus Yarns who really rounds it out.
Yeah, Marcus Yarns is exactly what we needed to round out this. Perfect. The chef's kiss of final prospects is a guy who went to the school that you went to, and it's fucking the University of Delaware. That is amazing. I need a D3. I need a kid that comes from D3 to make it on one of these lists so that I can talk about.
I mean, you guys are lucky that I don't do the starting ranks for underdog, or Marcus Yarns would have been at 130.
That's true.
Ahead of Woody Marks
would be 0 ADP, and Marcus Yarns would be going at pick 130. I would put Derek Carrier. Did he retire yet? I don't know if he retired yet. I put Derek Carrier way up high in the ranks because that's what we do apparently with the preloaded ADP. It's just whoever went to the schools that we went to.
Perfect.
All right. Anything before we get out of here?
No, I think we've covered it all. Only took 3 hours this time. The previous podcast was like 4 hours, but yeah.
Only 3 hours is a fucking hilarious way to summarize one of our podcasts, and also one of the most accurate ways. We'll be back. We haven't decided what we're going to talk about yet. So now that we're through the rookies, we're a little bit free. So Pat and I will chat about what we're going to talk about next, but be on the lookout for the next legendary sickos, and enjoy. And no more NFL. And we're going to have a lot of content. I know Pat's got it coming. We're going to have a whole shitload of content coming for you guys. So we'll see you guys next time. Peace.